You think I'm just a waitress? Watch me destroy a billionaire's empire in 6 hours. When Ethan Vale humiliates Clara Reed in front of Manhattan's elite, demanding stock tips like she's a circus act, he doesn't know she's the ghost who's been tracking his every trade for 3 years. One whispered warning about Triton Pharmaceuticals sends his world into freefall. By sunrise, someone will lose everything. The question isn't who, it's whether either of them will survive what comes next. Stay with me until the end of this story. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this tale travels. The rain hammered against the windows of Aurelius, Manhattan's most exclusive restaurant, where a single reservation required 6 months' notice and a credit card that didn't flinch at 4-figure appetizers. Clara Reed balanced 3 plates along her left arm, the porcelain hot enough to burn through the thin towel she'd wedged between skin and ceramic. Her shoulder ached. It always ached by hour 6 of her shift, a dull throb that started near her collarbone and radiated down to her fingertips. She didn't complain. Complaints got you fired, and fired meant eviction. And eviction meant sleeping in her car again, and she'd promised that she'd never go back to that. Table 12 was laughing too loud. Clara recognized the sound. Wealthy men performing for each other. Each joke a small act of dominance. Each burst of laughter a claim of territory. She'd served hundreds of tables like this one. Thousands, maybe. After a while, the faces blurred together into a single archetype. Expensive suits, careless hands, voices that expected the world to rearrange itself around their convenience. She approached with her head slightly down, her smile professionally blank. "Gentlemen, your appetizers. The tuna tartare, the oysters, and the truffle gnocchi." The man at the head of the table didn't look up. He was mid-sentence, gesturing with a glass of something amber, and probably older than Clara herself. "So I told Marcus you don't short Tesla on a Friday. That's suicide, but does he listen?" "No. Lost 2.3 million before lunch." The others laughed. Clara set down the plates with practiced efficiency, each one placed precisely where it belonged. She'd learned early that the rich notice things like that. A plate 2 inches off center could cost you a tip, and tips were the difference between making rent and not. She was turning to leave when the man's voice cut through the noise. "Hey, waitress." Clara stopped, turned. "Yes, sir?" He was looking at her now, really looking, and something in his gaze made her skin crawl. Not hunger, she'd dealt with that plenty, but something colder, calculating. Ethan Vale. She knew who he was, of course. Everyone did. 32 years old, worth somewhere north of $8 billion, depending on which magazine you believed. He'd built Vale Capital from nothing, or so the story went. Self-made, ruthless, the kind of man who turned markets inside out before breakfast and still had time to make Forbes' 30 under 30 list back when he qualified. He looked exactly like his photographs. Sharp jaw, dark hair styled just carelessly enough to suggest he didn't care about styling it. Eyes the color of slate. A $10,000 suit that fit so perfectly it might as well have been painted on. The watch on his wrist cost more than Clara's entire life. "You look like a smart girl," Ethan said. The table quieted. "What do you think about the market?" Clara's stomach tightened. This was a game. She recognized it instantly. The same game rich men had been playing with service workers since the invention of currency. Let's see how the little people think. Let's laugh at their adorable ignorance. "I think the market's closed, sir. It's past 9. Mild laughter from the table. Ethan's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Funny. I meant generally. You must have opinions. Everyone has opinions." He leaned back in his chair, swirling his drink. "Come on, indulge us. What should I invest in? What's the next big thing?" One of the other men, red-faced, probably drunk, grinned. "Yeah, sweetheart. Give us a hot tip. We'll cut you in." More laughter. Clara felt the familiar heat rising in her chest, that old anger she'd spent 3 years learning to bury. She thought about her apartment in Queens, about the eviction notice that had arrived 2 weeks ago, about the $11.34 currently in her checking account. She thought about who she used to be. "I wouldn't know, sir," she said quietly. "I just serve the food." "Oh, come on." Ethan gestured toward her with his glass, sloshing liquid dangerously close to the rim. "You work here. This place? Aurelius, you must hear things. All these Wall Street guys talking shop, making deals. You're invisible to them, right? A fly on the wall. I bet you know more than you think." The red-faced man snorted. Hell, she probably knows more than my analysts. Exactly my point. Ethan's eyes hadn't left Claire's face. So give us something, anything. What stock should I buy tomorrow? Claire's hands were shaking. She gripped her serving tray tighter, knuckles white against the metal. I really don't. How about this? Ethan pulled out his wallet, extracted a $100 bill, and placed it on the table. Then another. And another. 5 bills, fanned out like a hand of cards. $500 for one stock tip. That's what, half your monthly rent? More? The table had gone completely silent. Every eye was on her. Clara looked at the money. She looked at Ethan Vale's smug, handsome face. She looked at the men around him, all waiting for the show, for the moment when the waitress either scrambled for the cash like a trained dog or slunk away humiliated. Something broke inside her, something that had been cracking for 3 years, held together with duct tape and stubborn pride, and now it just gave way. Triton Pharmaceuticals, she said. Ethan blinked. What? You asked for a stock tip. Triton Pharmaceuticals. Ticker symbol TRTN. Currently trading at $68 and change. The red-faced man laughed. Triton, that's a solid company. Been climbing for months. Has it? Claire's voice was steady now, distant, like it was coming from somewhere else, someone else. Interesting. Ethan was studying her with renewed interest. You sound skeptical. Do I? Clara smiled, and it felt wrong on her face, like wearing someone else's skin. I'm just a waitress, Mr. Vale. What would I know? No, you brought it up. Go on. He leaned forward. You think Triton's overvalued? I think, Clara said slowly, that Triton's CFO has been cooking the books for 18 months. I think their flagship drug, Reparocel, the one that's supposed to revolutionize cartilage regeneration, failed its phase 3 trials 3 weeks ago, but they buried the results. I think the FDA is going to release a letter tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. announcing a formal investigation. And I think that by sunrise, Triton Pharmaceuticals won't be worth the paper their stock certificates are printed on. You could have heard a pin drop. Clara picked up the $500 from the table, folded the bills carefully, and tucked them into her apron. Thanks for the tip, gentlemen. I'll be sure to invest wisely. She walked away before anyone could respond, her legs somehow carrying her across the dining room, through the kitchen doors, past the line cooks and dishwashers who barely glanced up from their work. She made it to the employee bathroom, locked herself in a stall, and stood there, breathing hard, wondering what the hell she'd just done. Her phone was in her pocket. She pulled it out with shaking hands and opened the encrypted messaging app she hadn't touched in 2 years. Did you send it? The reply came instantly. Sent. 5:47 a.m. tomorrow. Can't be stopped. Clara closed her eyes. After 3 years of hiding, of pretending to be no one, of serving food to people who destroyed her life without even knowing her name, she'd finally done it. She'd just declared war. In the dining room, Ethan Vale sat frozen, his drink forgotten in his hand. Did she just... The red-faced man trailed off. She did. Ethan's voice was barely above a whisper. That's insane. Triton's golden. They're up 14% this quarter alone. But Ethan wasn't listening. He was thinking about the waitress's eyes, dark brown, flat, completely devoid of fear when she'd spoken. He was thinking about the specificity of her claim. Phase 3 trials. FDA investigation, 6 a.m. tomorrow. Nobody made claims that specific unless they knew something. He pulled out his phone and dialed his head analyst. Marcus? Yeah, I know what time it is. I need you to pull everything you can find on Triton Pharmaceuticals in the next 30 minutes. Everything. Earnings reports, trial data, insider trading patterns, everything. Ethan, it's 9:30 on a Friday night. I don't care if it's Christmas morning. Do it. He hung up and stared at his plate, appetite gone. The man across from him, David Chen, hedge fund manager, notorious vulture, was grinning. You're not seriously spooked by the waitress, are you? She named the drug, Ethan said quietly. Reparocel. How many people outside pharmaceutical circles even know that name? It's public information. The specific trial phase, the CFO detail, The exact time the FDA will release the letter? Ethan shook his head. Nobody talks like that unless they have inside information. So what are you going to do? David asked. Ethan stood up, throwing $300 bills on the table. I'm going to find out who the hell she is. He caught up with Clara in the narrow hallway leading to the kitchen, grabbing her arm as she tried to push through the doors. She spun, eyes blazing, and he saw something there that made him step back. Not fear, but fury, cold and controlled. Let go of me. Who are you? Ethan demanded. I told you. I'm just a waitress. Bullshit. Nobody just knows that kind of detail. You have sources. Who told you about Triton? Clara yanked her arm free. Does it matter? It matters if you're trying to manipulate the market. It matters if you're spreading false information to what? Embarrass you in front of your friends? Clara laughed, sharp and bitter. Please, I don't care about you, Mr. Vale. I don't care about your portfolio or your ego or whether you believe me. Then why tell me? The question hung between them. Claire's expression shifted, something complicated moving behind her eyes. Because 3 years ago, men like you destroyed someone I loved, she said quietly. And because if Triton crashes the way I know it will, you're going to lose everything you put into it. Consider this a professional courtesy. She pushed through the kitchen doors, leaving Ethan standing alone in the hallway, his heart pounding for reasons he didn't fully understand. He pulled out his phone again. Another call, this time to his private investigator. Richard, yeah, it's me. I need you to run a background check on someone. Name's... He realized he didn't know her last name. She's a waitress at Aurelius, late 20s, early 30s, dark hair, about 5'6". I need everything. Where she lives, where she's from, who she talks to, what she eats for breakfast. I need it by midnight. That's 3 hours, Ethan. I'll pay triple your rate. Just get it done. Back at the table, his friends were settling the bill, their earlier joviality dampened by the strange encounter. David clapped him on the shoulder. Forget about it. Probably just some conspiracy theorist who reads too many Reddit threads. But Ethan couldn't forget. He kept seeing Clara's face, the way she'd looked at him, not with awe or attraction or fear, but with something close to pity. By sunrise, someone will lose everything. His phone buzzed. Marcus calling back. Talk to me. Okay, so I pulled what I could on short notice, Marcus said, typing audibly in the background. Triton looks clean on the surface. Good earnings, solid pipeline, management's been bullish in every interview, but what? There's been some weird trading activity. Nothing dramatic enough to flag the SEC, but several insiders sold significant positions about 3 weeks ago. The CFO dumped 40% of his holdings, called it portfolio diversification, but the timing's odd. Ethan's grip tightened on his phone. What else? I can't find any record of Phase 3 trial results being released. They're scheduled to present in December, but that's still 2 months out. If they had positive results, they'd have announced already. Pharma companies don't sit on good news. And if they had bad results? They'd bury them as long as legally possible, Marcus admitted. Look, I can dig deeper, but it's going to take time. Most of this data isn't public. We'd need someone with access to internal documents, regulatory filings that haven't been released yet. Do it, Ethan said. I don't care what it costs. I need to know if that waitress is crazy or if we're all about to get blindsided. He hung up and sat back in the leather seat of his town car, watching the city lights blur past. Manhattan at night, all glass and steel and money. The only home he'd known since he'd left Chicago 15 years ago with nothing but a business degree and a dangerous amount of ambition. He'd built Vale Capital by being smarter than everyone else, by seeing patterns others missed, by taking risks that terrified lesser men. But this, a random waitress with specific detailed knowledge about a pharmaceutical company's internal dealings, this was different. This felt personal. His phone buzzed again. Richard, the PI. That was fast, Ethan said. Yeah, well, she's not exactly in witness protection. Clara Reed, 30 years old, lives in Queens, works at Aurelius 6 nights a week. Before that, she was... Richard paused. This is weird. What's weird? She basically doesn't exist before 3 years ago. No employment records, no tax returns, no social media presence. It's like she materialized out of thin air in 2021. Ethan frowned. People don't just materialize. I know. Which means either she changed her identity or she's been living off the grid. I'll keep digging, but whoever Clara Reed was before she became Clara Reed, she covered her tracks pretty well. After Richard hung up, Ethan sat in silence, his mind racing. A woman with no past, working a minimum wage job, somehow possessing insider knowledge about a pharmaceutical company worth billions. The pieces didn't fit. Unless his phone rang. Unknown number. He answered. Mr. Vale? A woman's voice, not Clara's. Older, professional. Who is this? Someone who knows what you're looking for. The information about Triton. It's real. Every word Clara Reed told you is true. The FDA letter will be released at 6 a.m. tomorrow. By 9 a.m., Triton's stock will have lost 60% of its value. By close of business, the company will be in free fall. Ethan's blood ran cold. How do you know this? Because we wrote the letter. The woman paused. And because we've been tracking Triton's fraud for 2 years. Clara just gave you the biggest gift of your life, Mr. Vale. What you do with it is up to you. Wait, who is we? Who are you? That's not important. What's important is that you have approximately 9 hours to decide whether you believe her. Good luck. The line went dead. Ethan stared at his phone, his pulse thundering in his ears. If this was real, if even half of what Clara had said was true, Triton was about to crater. And if he acted on that information, if he shorted Triton before the crash, he could make hundreds of millions, possibly billions. But if he was wrong, if this was some elaborate scam or misunderstanding, he'd be ruined. Worse than ruined. He'd be a cautionary tale, the billionaire who bet everything on a waitress's tip and lost. His phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Found something? Call me. Ethan dialed immediately. What have you got? Okay, this is going to sound insane, but I hacked into Triton's internal email server. Don't ask me how, you don't want to know. And there's a message thread between the CFO and their head of clinical trials. It's encrypted, but I broke through. They're panicking. The trial failed. Reparocell causes severe immune responses in 30% of patients. They've been sitting on the data for 3 weeks, trying to figure out how to spin it. Ethan's hands went numb. You're sure? I'm looking at the emails right now. There's a conference call scheduled for tomorrow at 5 a.m. The CEO, the CFO, their legal team, and someone from the FDA. This is real, Ethan. That waitress wasn't bluffing. Ethan ended the call and leaned forward, tapping the partition between him and his driver. Change of plans. Take me to Queens. Queens, sir? Where in Queens? Ethan pulled up Richard's preliminary report, found Clara's address. 47th Avenue, Woodside. The driver's eyebrows rose, but he said nothing, merging into traffic and heading toward the Queensboro Bridge. Ethan spent the drive making calls. First to his trading team, waking them up, telling them to prepare for a major short position. Then to his lawyers, asking about the legality of trading on information provided by a third party. Then to his accountant, calculating how much capital he could mobilize on short notice. By the time the town car pulled up to Clara's building, a shabby 4-story walk-up sandwiched between a bodega and a laundromat, Ethan had made his decision. He was going all in. The building's front door was broken, the lock hanging uselessly from the frame. Ethan climbed the stairs, the smell of old cooking oil and mildew thick in the air. Clara's apartment was 3B. He knocked. No answer. He knocked again, harder. Ms. Reed, it's Ethan Vale from the restaurant. I need to talk to you. Still nothing. He tried the handle. Locked, obviously. He was about to leave when he heard movement inside. Quiet, deliberate, the sound of someone trying not to make noise. I know you're in there, Ethan said. I just need 5 minutes. Please. A long pause. Then the door opened a crack. The chain still engaged. Clara's face appeared in the gap, and Ethan saw that she'd been crying. Her eyes were red, mascara smudged. Go away, she said. I need to know how you knew about Triton. I told you, it doesn't matter. It matters to me. It matters because I'm about to bet my entire company on the information you gave me, and if I'm wrong, I'll lose everything. Ethan met her eyes. So please, tell me how you knew. Clara stared at him for a long moment. Then she closed the door. Ethan heard the chain sliding free. The door opened fully. You really want to know? She asked. Yes. She stepped aside. Then come in. The apartment was smaller than Ethan's closet. One room serving as bedroom, living room, and office, with a kitchenette tucked into one corner and a bathroom visible through a half-open door. But what stopped Ethan in his tracks were the walls. Every available surface was covered in paper, charts, graphs, printed emails, photographs connected by red string like something out of a conspiracy thriller. Stock tickers, company logos, names he recognized. Triton, yes, but also others. Dozens of others. All connected in a web of lines and notes written in cramped, precise handwriting. Jesus, Ethan breathed. Clara closed the door behind him. I was a quantitative analyst, she said quietly. 6 years ago, I worked for Silvercrest Financial. You've heard of them? Ethan nodded. Silvercrest had been one of the biggest hedge funds on the East Coast until it imploded in a spectacular scandal involving fraud, embezzlement, and regulatory violations. The CEO had fled to Monaco. The firm had been liquidated. My father ran their research division, Clara continued. Michael Reed. He was brilliant. Everyone said so. He could see patterns in market data that no one else could. He'd built this predictive algorithm. It was revolutionary. 93% accuracy over 5 years. She walked to the wall, touching a photograph. A man in his 50s, gray hair, kind eyes. Standing next to a younger Clara, both smiling. Silvercrest wasn't just a hedge fund, Clara said. It was a front. The real money came from insider trading, market manipulation, pump and dump schemes. My father didn't know at first. He thought he was just doing research, but eventually he figured it out. And when he did, he went to the SEC. Ethan's stomach sank. What happened? They killed him, Clara said flatly. Not literally, worse. They destroyed him. Within a week, he was indicted on fraud charges. His accounts were frozen. His reputation was annihilated. They planted evidence, falsified documents, paid witnesses to lie. He went from respected analyst to criminal overnight. Tears were running down her face now, but her voice remained steady. He was convicted, sentenced to 20 years. But he never made it to federal prison. 2 days before his transfer, he disappeared from the county jail. The official story is that he killed himself, hung himself in his cell. But there was no body, no investigation, just gone. Ethan felt like he'd been punched. Clara, I spent 3 years searching for him, she said. 3 years living off the grid, working cash jobs, building this. She gestured to the walls, tracking every connection, every conspiracy, every dirty deal. Silvercrest was just one node in a much bigger network. Pharmaceutical companies, tech firms, defense contractors, they're all connected, all manipulated by the same people. And Triton's CFO used to work for Silvercrest. So did 2 of their board members. They're using the same playbook. Pump the stock with fake data, cash out before it crashes. Let the retail investors take the loss. Clara looked at him. When I saw you tonight, I recognized you. I've been tracking your trades for 2 years, Mr. Vale. You're one of the good ones. Ruthless, yes. Arrogant, absolutely. But not corrupt. Not yet. Ethan didn't know what to say. The woman standing before him wasn't a waitress. She was a ghost, a survivor, someone who'd lost everything and rebuilt herself into something sharp and dangerous. Why warn me? He finally asked. Because when Triton falls, it's going to take other companies with it. And some of those companies are connected to the people who destroyed my father. I need allies, Mr. Vale. People with resources, influence, the ability to move markets. She stepped closer. I gave you Triton as a test. If you're smart enough to believe me, ruthless enough to act on it, and lucky enough to survive what comes next, then maybe, you can help me finish what I started. Which is finding my father, Clara said, and destroying everyone who took him from me. Ethan looked at the walls again, at the years of obsessive research, at the web of connections and conspiracies. This woman had given up everything, her career, her identity, her life, for revenge. He should walk away. He should run. This was insane. Instead, he heard himself say, "What do you need?" Clara smiled, and for the first time since he'd met her, it looked genuine. For now, just do what you do best. Short Triton, make it hurt. And when the market opens Monday morning and everyone's scrambling to understand what happened, I'll contact you again. She walked to the door, opened it. A clear dismissal. Ethan paused in the doorway. If you're wrong about this, I'm not. But if you are, then you'll lose everything and I'll disappear again, and this conversation never happened. Clara met his eyes. But I'm not wrong, Mr. Vale. I haven't been wrong in 3 years, and I'm not going to start now. Ethan left. The drive back to Manhattan felt surreal, like he'd stumbled through a door into a different world and couldn't quite find his way back. By the time he reached his penthouse, it was past midnight. He poured himself a drink, scotch, 25 years old, smoky and expensive, and stood at the window looking out over the city. His phone was full of messages, his team waiting for instructions, his lawyers advising caution, his partners asking if he'd lost his mind. He ignored them all and made one call. Marcus, how much capital can we mobilize by market open Monday? Ethan, it's almost 1 a.m. How much? A pause. If we liquidate the emergency reserves and leverage our credit lines? Maybe $4 billion. But that's insane. We can't risk that kind of exposure on $4 billion, Ethan interrupted. I want it all on Triton, short positions, maximum leverage. You're betting the entire company on a waitress's tip. No, Ethan said quietly, thinking of Clara's apartment, her walls, her eyes. I'm betting on something bigger than that. He hung up before Marcus could argue further. At 5:47 a.m., Ethan was still awake, sitting in his office, watching the pre-market numbers. His entire staff was there too, grim-faced and silent. They'd spent the night setting up the trade, the biggest short position Vale Capital had ever taken. At 5:58, Ethan's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. 2 minutes. Don't blink. At 6 a.m. exactly, the FDA's website updated. There, Marcus said, pointing at his screen. Official letter. Formal investigation into Triton Pharmaceuticals for falsification of clinical trial data and, oh God, the number started falling. $68, 65, 60. The drop accelerated as automated trading systems reacted, as news alerts went out, as the world woke up to discover that Triton was a fraud. 55, 50, 45. By 6:30 a.m., Triton had lost half its value. By 7 a.m., trading was halted. By 9 a.m., when the market officially opened, Triton Pharmaceuticals was worth less than $12 a share. Vale Capital's short position had just made $3.7 billion. The office erupted in cheers. People were crying, laughing, embracing. Marcus was screaming something about going down in history, but Ethan wasn't celebrating. He was staring at his phone at another text from the unknown number. Told you. Now the real work begins. He looked out the window at the city below, at the millions of people who had no idea that everything was about to change. Clara Reed had just proven she could predict the future, and Ethan Vale had just become her partner in a war he didn't fully understand yet. But he would. Soon. Because somewhere in that web of conspiracies and connections, somewhere in the darkness that had swallowed Clara's father and countless others, there was a truth waiting to be uncovered. And Ethan was going to help her find it, even if it destroyed them both. The celebration lasted exactly 47 minutes before Ethan's phone rang with a number he didn't recognize. He stepped away from the chaos of his trading floor, where Marcus was still shouting about percentages and leverage ratios, and answered in the relative quiet of his corner office. Congratulations, Clara said. No preamble, no warmth, just that flat, efficient tone. You just made more money than most people see in 10 lifetimes. Thanks to you. Ethan watched the numbers still cascading across his monitors. Triton was down to $8 now, still falling. I owe you. You don't owe me anything. Not yet. A pause. But you will. Something in her voice made his spine straighten. What do you mean? I mean that Triton was a test. A small one. The people behind Silvercrest, behind my father's disappearance, they're watching now. They saw what just happened. They know someone leaked the FDA information early. So they're going to start looking for the source. And when they do, they're going to find breadcrumbs leading straight to you. Clara's voice dropped. You have maybe 72 hours before they figure out you didn't just get lucky, before they realize you knew. Ethan's euphoria evaporated. You set me up. I gave you a choice. You made it. No apology in her voice. Now you're in this whether you like it or not. The question is what you're going to do about it. He looked out at his team, at the people who'd trusted him enough to bet everything on his word. Marcus was popping champagne. Sarah from compliance was crying happy tears. They had no idea they'd just painted a target on Vale Capital's back. "What do you want from me?" Ethan asked quietly. "Meet me. Tonight. Same address. Come alone and don't tell anyone where you're going." She hung up before he could respond. Ethan stood there for a long moment, phone still pressed to his ear, listening to dead air. Through the glass wall of his office, he could see his son's school photo on his desk. Dylan, age 7, gap-toothed smile, holding a soccer ball. The frame had been a gift from Dylan's mother before she'd left them both 3 years ago, before the cancer had taken her 6 months later. Everything he'd built, every risk he'd taken, every ruthless decision, it had all been for that kid. To give Dylan a life where money was never a problem, where opportunity was infinite, where the kind of poverty Ethan had grown up with was just a story about someone else's past. And now he'd potentially thrown it all away for a woman he'd met 12 hours ago. He went back to the trading floor, shook hands, accepted congratulations, smiled until his face hurt. At 6 p.m., he told Marcus he was leaving early, needed to clear his head. Marcus, still drunk on victory, barely noticed. The drive to Queens felt longer this time. Ethan kept checking his mirrors, looking for cars that might be following him, feeling paranoid and hating himself for it. He'd survived hostile takeovers, market crashes, competitor sabotage. He didn't spook easily. But Clara Reed wasn't a market fluctuation or a business rival. She was something else entirely. The building looked even more decrepit in daylight. Graffiti on the walls, garbage bags piled by the curb, a group of teenagers smoking on the stoop who barely glanced at his town car. Ethan climbed to the 3rd floor, knocked on 3B. Clara opened immediately, like she'd been waiting by the door. She'd changed out of her waitress uniform into jeans and a faded Columbia University sweatshirt. No makeup, hair pulled back. She looked younger like this, and more tired. "You came," she said. "Did you think I wouldn't?" "I thought you might be smart enough not to." She stepped aside. "Come in." The apartment looked different in the afternoon light streaming through the single window. The papers on the wall were more visible now. Ethan could read names, see dates, follow the red strings connecting dozens of companies and individuals. It was overwhelming and obsessive and more than a little frightening. "You've been doing this for 3 years?" he asked. "Every day." Clara moved to a laptop on a folding table, the screen showing multiple windows of data feeds, chat logs, encrypted messages. "I work nights at the restaurant because it gives me access to people like you. People who talk too loud about their trades, their inside information, their connections. You'd be amazed what wealthy men will say in front of someone they think is invisible. And you just collect it all? I build cases, evidence trails. I find the connections no one else sees." She pulled up a file, turned the laptop toward him. "Like this. Recognize these names?" Ethan scanned the document. Board members, executives, hedge fund managers. Half of them he'd met at conferences or charity events. The other half he knew by reputation. "What about them?" "They're all connected to Silvercrest. Some worked there directly. Others were investors or partners or beneficiaries of their insider trading schemes. When Silvercrest collapsed, these people didn't go down with it. They scattered, joined new companies, started new funds, continued the same practices under different names." Clara brought up another window, this one showing a network diagram that looked like a spider web. Triton Pharmaceuticals sat at one junction point. Triton was just one operation. There are 17 others I've identified. Pharmaceutical fraud, defense contractor kickbacks, tech company pump and dumps, all run by the same core group of maybe 30 people. Her finger traced a line on the screen. And at the center of it all is someone they call the architect. The architect. I don't know his real name, I don't know what he looks like. But every major market manipulation over the last decade has his fingerprints on it. He's the one who ordered my father's destruction. He's the one who made him disappear. Clara's voice cracked slightly. And he's the one who's going to come after you next. Ethan sat down heavily on the apartment's only chair, a plastic folding thing that creaked under his weight. Why me? I'm just one trader who made a good call. You made $4 billion on a call that required insider knowledge of an FDA investigation. That's not luck, Ethan. That's conspiracy. And the moment the architect's people start digging into how you knew, they're going to find anomalies. Your analyst accessing Triton's email server, your unusual trading pattern, the fact that you were at Aurelius last night sitting 20 feet from me. She was right. Of course she was right. Ethan had been so focused on the trade itself that he hadn't thought about the aftermath, about the questions people would ask. So what do I do? He asked. You help me. Clara closed the laptop. You have resources I don't have. Money, connections, legitimacy. You can access places and people I can't get near. Together, we can do what I've been trying to do alone for 3 years. We can expose the entire network and find my father before they kill him. You think he's still alive? I know he is. She said it with absolute certainty. They kept him alive because of his algorithm, the predictive model he built. It's too valuable to destroy. Somewhere, they're holding him, forcing him to work for them. And I'm going to get him back. Ethan looked at her, at this woman who'd traded a career in finance for a waitress's wages, who'd covered her walls in conspiracy theories that were apparently true, who'd just used him as bait in a war against people he couldn't see. He should walk away, should cut his losses, take his winnings, disappear to some country without extradition treaties. Instead, he asked, "Where do we start?" Clara's expression shifted. Relief, maybe, or something harder to name. With you staying alive long enough to be useful. The architect's people move fast. By tomorrow, they'll have identified you as a person of interest. By Wednesday, they'll have someone inside your company, your building, maybe your home. That's impossible. Your security is private contractors making $60,000 a year. How much do you think it would take to bribe one of them? 100,000? 200? Clara shook her head. You need to assume everyone around you is potentially compromised. Trust no one. That's paranoid. My father thought it was paranoid too, right up until the day he vanished from a jail cell with 8 cameras and 16 guards. She grabbed a bag from under her mattress, a battered backpack that looked like it had seen better days. Pack essentials, laptop, files, anything you can't afford to lose. We're leaving. Leaving? I have a son, Dylan. He's 7. Clara froze. You have a kid? Shared custody with my late wife's sister. He's with her this week, but I can't just disappear on him. Then you need to make sure he's protected too. Clara pulled out her phone, made a call. Marcus? Yeah, it's Elena. I need you to run a check on Sarah Mackenzie, Upper East Side. Security detail, anyone watching her building, usual patterns. A pause. Yeah, 20 minutes. She hung up, looked at Ethan. That's his aunt? Yes. Who's Marcus? Who's Elena? Aliases. People who help me. Clara was typing rapidly on her phone now. If the architect thinks you're a threat, he'll use your son as leverage. We need to know if anyone's watching the kid. The casual way she said it made Ethan's blood run cold. If you've put Dylan in danger, Sat. I didn't put him in danger. You did. The moment you decided to trade on the Triton information. Clara looked up, and her eyes were hard. You wanted to play in the big leagues, Ethan. Well, congratulations. This is what the big leagues look like. She was right again, and he hated it. He'd made the choice. He'd taken the risk. And now Dylan was potentially in the crosshairs because of his arrogance. What do you need me to do? He asked, voice tight. Right now? Wait. Clara went back to her laptop, pulling up multiple camera feeds. These are traffic cameras near your son's school, his aunt's building, the parks he frequents. I've been monitoring them since this morning. You've been watching my son? I've been keeping him safe. There's a difference. She pointed at one screen. See that gray sedan? It's been parked across from the school for 6 hours. Driver hasn't moved. That's surveillance. Ethan leaned closer. The image was grainy but clear enough to see a man sitting behind the wheel, occasionally raising something to his face. Binoculars or a camera. Call your sister-in-law, Clara said. Tell her to take Dylan somewhere public, a museum, a restaurant, somewhere with cameras and crowds. Don't explain why. Just insist. Ethan pulled out his phone, dialed Sarah's number. She answered on the 3rd ring, sounding harried. Ethan, is everything okay? I heard about your trade. That's amazing. Sarah, I need you to do something for me. Take Dylan to the Natural History Museum right now. Now? It's almost 7. We were about to have dinner. Please, it's important. I'll explain later, but I need you to go somewhere public with him. Stay there for at least 2 hours. A pause. Sarah knew him well enough to hear the urgency in his voice. Ethan, you're scaring me. I know. I'm sorry. Just trust me. Please. Okay? Okay, we'll go, but you owe me an explanation. I'll call you in an hour. He hung up, looked at Clara. Now what? Now we see if they follow. Clara switched camera views, tracking Sarah's building entrance. 15 minutes later, they saw Sarah emerge with Dylan, the boy bundled in a jacket, chattering animatedly about something. They walked toward the subway. The gray sedan didn't move. Could be a coincidence, Ethan said. Could be. Clara didn't sound convinced. Let's give it another 30 minutes. They waited in silence, watching the screens. Ethan used the time to study the papers on Clara's walls more carefully. He recognized more names than he wanted to. Fund managers he'd competed against, executives he'd met at conferences, even a few politicians. The network was vast and deeply entrenched. How did you find all this? He asked. Patience, obsession, a willingness to live on nothing while I followed every lead. Clara didn't look away from the screens. My father taught me how to see patterns. He used to say that markets were just stories, and if you understood the narrative, you could predict the ending. I applied that to people instead of stocks. And it worked? I'm still alive, aren't I? She finally glanced at him. Barely, but yeah. At the 40-minute mark, another car pulled up near the school, a black SUV with tinted windows. Two men got out, scanned the area, spoke briefly with someone Ethan couldn't see. Then they got back in and drove away. That's a problem, Clara said. Who were they? Security contractors, probably checking if your son was still at school. She started packing up her laptop. They know you're connected to the Triton leak now. They're mapping your vulnerabilities. Ethan's hands were shaking. I need to get Dylan out of the city. You need to stay calm. Clara's voice was sharp. Panic gets people killed. Your sister-in-law is taking him to a public place. He's safe for now. What we need to do is figure out our next move before they make theirs. Which is what? Clara slung her backpack over her shoulder. We go on a fence. They think you're a lucky trader who stumbled onto information. We're going to let them keep thinking that while we dig into their operation and find out where they're keeping my father. That's insane. These people made a man disappear from police custody. Vicky? And they're not expecting us to fight back. That's our advantage. Clara headed for the door. Come on, we're not staying here. This address is burned now that you've been here twice. Where are we going? Somewhere they won't think to look. She led him down the stairs and out into the street, moving quickly but not running. They walked 3 blocks to a parking garage where Clara retrieved a beaten Honda Civic that looked like it had survived at least 2 demolition derbies. You drive this? Ethan asked. It's paid for in cash and registered to a dead person. Perfect camouflage. She unlocked it, slid into the driver's seat. Get in. They drove in silence through Queens, then across the bridge into Brooklyn. The neighborhoods got rougher, the buildings more industrial. Finally, Clara pulled into an alley behind what looked like an abandoned warehouse. You're kidding, Ethan said. I own it. Paid cash 3 years ago, shell company, completely untraceable. She parked, killed the engine. Welcome to my real office. Inside, the warehouse was anything but abandoned. Clara had set up a command center that would make an intelligence agency jealous. Multiple computers, servers humming in the corner, screens showing data feeds from around the world. The walls here were covered in papers too, but these were organized, categorized, color-coded by company and crime. This is where you've been working, Ethan asked, stunned. Every night after my shift ends, sometimes until dawn. Clara dropped her backpack, immediately moving to the computers and typing in passwords. The apartment in Queens is just for sleeping. This is where I actually live. Ethan walked along the wall, reading names and dates and transactions. The scale of it was staggering. Clara wasn't chasing one conspiracy. She was documenting an entire criminal empire that had operated in plain sight for over a decade. How have you stayed alive? He asked. By being invisible. By working a job no one notices, living in a place no one looks, and never making a move until I was absolutely certain. She pulled up a file on the main screen. But you changed that. The Triton trade was supposed to happen in another 6 months, after I'd built more evidence. You forced my hand. You could have not told me. I could have. But I needed to see what you'd do. whether you'd take the bait or walk away. Clara looked at him. You took it, which means you're either greedy, reckless, or desperate. Probably all three. I'm a father trying to secure my son's future. And that makes you predictable, exploitable. She turned back to the screens. But it also means you'll fight harder than someone who only cares about money. I can work with that. Ethan's phone buzzed. Sarah, calling back. Where are you? She demanded. We've been at the museum for an hour. Dylan's getting tired. Stay there another 30 minutes. Then go to the Riverside Hotel and check in under your maiden name. Don't go back to your apartment tonight. Ethan, what is going on? I can't explain right now. Just please do this for me. I'll have someone deliver clothes and whatever else you need, but don't go home. Sarah's voice dropped. Are we in danger? I'm being careful. That's all. I'll explain everything tomorrow, I promise. He hung up before she could argue further. Clara was watching him. She's not going to listen. She will. Sarah's been through enough. She knows when I'm serious. And when she asks you tomorrow what this is about, what are you going to tell her? Ethan didn't have an answer. Clara pulled up another screen, this one showing financial transactions. While they're safe, we work. I need you to look at these accounts and tell me if you recognize the patterns. Ethan moved closer. The transactions were complex, shell companies moving money through multiple jurisdictions, timing purchases to avoid detection, using complex derivatives to hide the real trades. This is money laundering, he said. Classic structure. Wait. He leaned in. These accounts. I've seen this pattern before. Where? One of my clients used to do something similar. Not illegal, just aggressive tax avoidance. The timing, the jurisdictions, it's the same playbook. His mind raced. If they're using the same structure, they might be using the same banks, the same attorneys, the same vulnerabilities. Clara was already typing. Which client? Meridian Trust. Tech billionaire, completely paranoid about privacy. He had his lawyers set up this whole network of... Ethan stopped. Oh, God. What? Andrew Zhao, the founder of Meridian Trust. He was at the restaurant last night. He was at my table when you told me about Triton. Clara's fingers froze on the keyboard. You're sure? Positive. He's the one who made the joke about you knowing more than his analysts. Ethan felt sick. He heard everything. Then he's already told them. Clara spun to another computer, pulled up a profile. Andrew Zhao's face filled the screen. Late 40s, billion-dollar smile, the kind of man who collected art and politicians. He's not just connected to the architect. According to my research, he might be the architect. The room tilted. Ethan grabbed the edge of the desk to steady himself. That's impossible. He's respected, philanthropic. He funds education programs. He funds what he wants people to see. The real money goes elsewhere. Clara brought up more files. Zhao was a major investor in Silvercrest. When it collapsed, he positioned himself as a victim, lost $20 million supposedly. But 3 months later, he made $200 million on trades that perfectly predicted which companies would benefit from Silvercrest's collapse. Inside information. Not just inside. He orchestrated it. My father's algorithm was worth billions. Zhao wanted it. When my father refused to hand it over, Zhao destroyed him and took it anyway. Clara's voice was shaking now. And now Zhao knows we're onto him. Ethan pulled out his phone, hands trembling. He had 17 missed calls from Marcus, 6 from other partners, 3 from numbers he didn't recognize. 1 voicemail from Andrew Zhao himself, left 20 minutes ago. He played it on speaker. Ethan, Andrew here. Quite the trade this morning. Very impressive. We should talk about how you developed that particular insight. I'm having a small gathering tomorrow night, few friends from the industry. I'd love for you to join us. Bring your analyst team. Let's discuss opportunities. A pause. Oh, and Ethan? Congratulations on Dylan's soccer game last weekend. I hear he scored the winning goal. You must be very proud. The message ended. Clara was staring at him. He just threatened your son. I know. Ethan's voice didn't sound like his own, distant, mechanical. What do we do? We accept the invitation. Claire was already moving, pulling up maps and building schematics. If Zhao's inviting you to a gathering, it means he wants you close, wants to see what you know, who you've told. It's an interrogation disguised as a party. Then we don't go. We absolutely go. It's our chance to get inside his operation, to see who else is involved, to find evidence. She looked at him. And maybe, if we're lucky, to find out where he's keeping my father. This is suicide. This is the only play we have. Clara grabbed his shoulders, forced him to look at her. Listen to me. Zhao is careful. He doesn't make moves unless he's certain of the outcome. The fact that he called you means he doesn't know everything yet. He suspects, but he doesn't know. We can use that. How? By giving him a story he wants to believe. You're a greedy trader who got lucky with a random tip. You don't know where it came from, don't know about the larger conspiracy. You're just a guy trying to make money. She released him. Can you sell that? Ethan thought about all the times he'd bluffed in negotiations, all the poker faces he'd worn in boardrooms, all the lies he'd told to protect his company or his son or himself. Yeah, he said, I can sell it. Good. Because tomorrow night, you're going to walk into a room full of people who've killed for less than what you know. And you're going to smile and shake hands and pretend you're just another greedy bastard who doesn't care how the sausage gets made. She went back to her computers, pulling up everything she had on Zhao's properties, his associates, his patterns. Ethan watched her work, this woman who'd lost everything and rebuilt herself into a weapon. Why are you doing this? He asked quietly. You could have disappeared, changed your name again, moved to another country. Why stay and fight? Clara didn't look up from her screens. Because I made my father a promise. The last time I saw him, the day before they arrested him, he told me that if anything happened to him, I should run, save myself, forget about him, and just survive. Her hand stilled on the keyboard. I told him I would. I lied. He wouldn't want you to risk your life. He's my father. I don't care what he wants. Now she did look at Ethan, and her eyes were fierce. These people took everything from me, my career, my identity, my family. They made me into a ghost. So I'm going to haunt them until either I find my father or they kill me trying. Those are the only two endings this story gets. Ethan understood that kind of determination. He'd felt it himself after Dylan's mother died, that absolute refusal to let the world break him, that stubborn insistence on survival even when survival felt impossible. Okay, he said. Tell me what you need. They worked through the night. Clara walked him through everything she knew about Zhao's operation, the front companies, the offshore accounts, the network of lawyers and accountants who kept everything technically legal while being morally bankrupt. Ethan contributed what he knew about the financial side, helping Clara understand trading patterns and market manipulations he recognized. Around 3 a.m., Clara's phone buzzed with a message that made her sit up straight. What is it? Ethan asked. My contact inside the SEC, the one who helped prepare the FDA letter about Triton. She read the message twice. Zhao's lawyers filed a motion this afternoon requesting all communications related to the investigation. They're trying to find the leak. Will they find it? Maybe. My contact was careful, but nobody's perfect. Clara stood, paced. We're running out of time faster than I thought. Then we move up the timeline. I'll call Zhao in the morning, tell him I'm coming to his party. No, we need one more piece first. Clara pulled up a file labeled Providence Holdings. This is a shell company Zhao uses for his black operations. If my father's alive, Providence is paying for wherever he's being held. But I can't crack their accounts. The encryption is military grade. So we need someone who can. I know someone. But he's expensive and paranoid, and he's going to want assurances we can protect him. Clara looked at Ethan. How much liquid cash can you get your hands on by noon tomorrow? How much do you need? $500,000. Unmarked, non-sequential bills. Ethan laughed, more from exhaustion than humor. You're serious. Deadly serious. He ran the numbers in his head. His personal accounts, the emergency funds, the cash he kept on hand for exactly this kind of situation, even though he'd never imagined actually using it. I can do it, he said, but it'll empty me out. If this goes wrong, money won't matter anyway. Clara closed the laptop. Get some sleep. We've got 4 hours before the banks open. She pointed him toward a corner of the warehouse where she'd set up a cot and a sleeping bag. It wasn't comfortable, but Ethan was too exhausted to care. He lay down, closed his eyes, and immediately saw Dylan's face, heard Zhao's voicemail mentioning his son's soccer game. Sleep didn't come easy. When Ethan's alarm went off at 7 a.m., Clara was already awake, looking like she hadn't slept at all. She handed him a cup of coffee that tasted like motor oil. Your sister-in-law called the hotel twice last night, Clara said. I answered, told her you were in a meeting, bought us some time, but she's going to want real answers soon. I know. Ethan drank the terrible coffee. I'll figure something out. Figure it out fast. The less she knows, the safer she is. Clara grabbed her jacket. Come on, we have a hacker to hire. They took Clara's dying Honda to a coffee shop in Williamsburg, the kind of place where everyone was either coding or pretending to write a screenplay. Clara led him to a back booth where a kid who couldn't have been more than 25 sat hunched over 3 laptops, looking like he'd been mainlining Red Bull for days. Felix, Clara said. The kid looked up, saw Ethan, immediately started closing his laptops. Who's this? A friend. He's clean. Clara slid into the booth. I need you to crack something for me. I'm out of that game. Told you last time, $500,000. Felix's hands froze halfway to his laptop bag. You're joking. Dead serious, Clara nodded at Ethan. He's got the cash. You've got the skills. We need into Providence Holdings' encrypted accounts by tonight. Providence? You mean Andrew Zhao's Providence? Felix shook his head. No way. That's fortress-level security. Nation-state level. I'd need weeks, maybe months. You've got 8 hours. Clara leaned forward. And before you say it's impossible, remember who taught you half of what you know. Felix stared at her for a long moment. Then, incredibly, he smiled. You're insane, he said. But okay, show me what you've got. Felix worked like a man possessed, fingers flying across 3 keyboards simultaneously, while code cascaded down his screens in streams of green text. Ethan had delivered the cash in 2 duffel bags at noon, watching the kid's eyes go wide before he'd zip them back up and shove them under the table without counting. Trust goes both ways, Felix had muttered, already diving into the Providence Holdings firewalls. Now, 6 hours later, they were still in the coffee shop. Clara had bought out every pastry in the display case to justify their presence, and the barista had stopped giving them suspicious looks around R3. Ethan's phone wouldn't stop buzzing, Marcus wanting to discuss next moves, partners demanding meetings, reporters asking for comments about the Triton trade. He'd silenced it all. Got something? Felix said suddenly. His face was pale, lit by the blue glow of his screens. This is bad. This is really bad. Clara moved behind him. Show me. Providence isn't just a shell company. It's a network. Look. Felix pulled up a diagram that made Ethan's stomach drop. 15 subsidiary companies, all doing different things. Medical research facilities, private security contractors, data analytics firms. But they're all funneling money to one location. Where? Ethan asked. Felix's fingers danced across the keyboard, pulling up satellite imagery. A compound in upstate New York. Middle of nowhere, officially registered as a private psychiatric hospital called Clearwater Institute. But look at the power consumption. He overlaid utility data on the satellite image. This place is pulling enough electricity to run a small city. No psychiatric hospital needs that much power unless they're running servers, Clara finished. Heavy computational work, like financial modeling. Like an algorithm, Ethan said quietly. Clara's hands were shaking as she leaned closer to the screen. Show me personnel records, anyone who works there, anyone who's been admitted, anything. Felix pulled up encrypted files, his earlier bravado replaced by focused intensity. Patient records are locked tight, but I can see staff payroll, doctors, nurses, standard medical personnel. But also, wait, there's a section here that's double encrypted. Different security protocols than the rest. Can you crack it? Give me 10 minutes. Felix's fingers were already moving. Ethan watched the code scroll past, understanding none of it but recognizing the tension in Felix's shoulders, the way Clara gripped the edge of the table hard enough to leave marks. His phone buzzed again. Sarah, for the 4th time that hour. He stepped outside to answer. Where are you? Sarah demanded. Dylan keeps asking when you're coming to get him. I've been lying to him all day. I know, I'm sorry. Tomorrow, I promise. That's what you said yesterday. Ethan, what is going on? The news is calling you a financial genius, but you're hiding out like a criminal, and there are strange cars that keep driving past the hotel. Ethan's blood went cold. What cars? I don't know, just different ones. They slow down near the entrance like they're looking for someone. I'm probably being paranoid, but after you told me to come here, you're not being paranoid. Listen to me carefully. Pack Dylan's things. Go to Grand Central. Take the first train to Boston. Doesn't matter which one. When you get there, check into a hotel under a different name. Pay cash. Don't use your credit cards. Ethan, you're terrifying me. I know, I'm terrified too, but I need you to trust me. Please, Sarah, take Dylan and go, right now. There was a long pause, then quietly, is he in danger? Ethan closed his eyes. Through the coffee shop window, he could see Clara and Felix hunched over the laptops, chasing ghosts through encrypted files. Not if you leave now. Okay, we're going. Sarah's voice was tight. But Ethan, whatever you've gotten into, you need to get out. Dylan needs his father alive. She hung up. Ethan stood on the sidewalk, breathing hard, watching traffic flow past. Somewhere in that river of cars and people, someone was watching. Someone was always watching. He went back inside. Felix had cracked the encrypted section. You need to see this, the kid said. His face had gone from pale to gray. The files showed medical records, but not normal ones. These detailed experimental procedures, drug trials, neurological testing, all performed on a single patient identified only as Subject 17. Claire was reading through the records, her lips moving silently. When she looked up, there were tears on her face. It's him, she whispered. The medications they're giving him. My father has a rare blood disorder. He needs specific anticoagulants. These prescriptions match exactly. Are you sure? Ethan asked. I'm sure. She pointed at a note buried in the records. Look at this. Subject continues to resist cooperation despite incentives. Threatens to corrupt algorithm outputs if demands aren't met. That's him. That's exactly what he'd do. Felix pulled up more files. There's a security schedule, guard rotations, access protocols, emergency procedures. This place is locked down tight. Cameras everywhere, biometric scanners, the works. You can't just walk in there. We're not going to walk in, Clara said. Her voice had changed, gone hard and focused. We're going to be invited. Ethan understood immediately. Zhao's party. Zhao's party. Clara started photographing the screens with her phone. If he's keeping my father at Clearwater, he'll have files about it somewhere, personnel records, financial documents, something that connects him directly to the facility. And you think he keeps those files at his house? I think a man paranoid enough to run this kind of operation doesn't trust everything to the cloud. He'll have physical backups somewhere secure, somewhere he can access them, but others can't. She looked at Ethan. We get into that party, we find his office, we get the files. That's insane, Felix said. Zhao's security will be everywhere, which is why Ethan's going to go in the front door as an invited guest, while I go in the back as someone they won't notice. Claire was already planning, her mind racing ahead. Felix, I need you to create a service credential, something that'll get me past basic security checks. What kind of service? Catering company. Make it look established enough to be legitimate, but generic enough not to attract attention. Felix was already typing. Done. You're now an employee of Premier Events, LLC. Background check will hold up to basic scrutiny, but don't push it. I won't have to. People don't look twice at waitresses. Clara said it with bitter familiarity. Ethan, you need to call Zhao. Tell him you're coming to the party. Bring Marcus or another analyst if you want it to look legitimate. Marcus will ask questions. So answer them with lies. You're good at that. Clara softened slightly. I'm sorry, that was harsh, but we don't have time for gentle. This party is happening in 5 hours. We need to move. Ethan pulled out his phone, found Andrew Zhao's number. His hands were steady, which surprised him. Maybe he was getting used to this constant fear, or maybe he'd just run out of adrenaline to spare. Zhao answered on the first ring. Ethan, I was hoping you'd call. Andrew, about that invitation, I'd love to come. Can I bring my head analyst, Marcus Chen? You've met him. Of course. The more the merrier. We'll have drinks, discuss the future of finance, celebrate your remarkable insight. There was something oily in Zhao's voice, like poison wrapped in honey. 8 o'clock. You know the address? I'll find it. I'm sure you will. You seem very good at finding things. A pause. See you tonight, Ethan. The line went dead. Clara was watching him. He knows. He suspects. There's a difference. Not much of one. She gathered her things, nodded to Felix. Encrypt everything you found and send it to this address. She wrote down a string of numbers and letters on a napkin. Then disappear for a few days. If this goes wrong, they'll be looking for everyone who helped us. Felix looked at the duffel bags of cash under the table. Where should I go? Anywhere but here. Canada, Mexico, I don't care. Just go dark until I contact you. The kid nodded, already packing up his equipment. Ethan and Clara left him there, counting his fortune and probably wondering if he'd just made the best or worst decision of his life. Back at the warehouse, Clara pulled out a black catering uniform from a storage locker that seemed to contain every disguise imaginable. She changed in the bathroom, emerging looking like a completely different person. Hair pulled back severely, minimal makeup, the kind of invisible service worker people's eyes slid past without registering. How do I look? She asked. Like someone I'd never notice, Ethan said honestly. Perfect. She checked her watch. You need to go home, shower, put on your best suit. Look like the billionaire everyone expects. I'll meet you at Zhao's estate. Don't acknowledge me, don't look at me, don't do anything that suggests we know each other. What if something goes wrong? Then we improvise. But Ethan, she grabbed his arm. If you get the chance to save yourself at my expense, take it. Your son needs you alive. My father needs me to finish this. Those are the priorities. I'm not abandoning you. You might have to. Be prepared for that possibility. She released him. Now go. You have 3 hours to become the kind of man Andrew Zhao wants to corrupt. The drive back to Manhattan felt surreal. Ethan's penthouse was exactly as he'd left it. Expensive, sterile, full of things that were supposed to represent success, but just felt empty now. He showered, shaved, put on a Tom Ford suit that cost more than Clara probably made in 6 months. Looking in the mirror, he saw exactly what he was supposed to be. Wealthy, confident, slightly arrogant. A man who'd made a brilliant trade and wanted to celebrate. Not a man about to walk into a trap. Marcus called as Ethan was adjusting his tie. Please tell me we're not actually going to Zhao's party. We're actually going to Zhao's party. Ethan, this is a bad idea. Zhao's been asking questions about the Triton trade. He wants to know how we knew. So we tell him the truth. We got lucky. Right analyst, right time, right instinct. Ethan kept his voice light. Marcus, this is how the game works. We made money. Now we network with the people who can help us make more. It's just business. It doesn't feel like just business. It never does at this level. Pick me up at 7:30. Wear something nice. He hung up before Marcus could argue further. His phone showed a text from Sarah, a photo of Dylan on a train, grinning, holding up a hot dog. The message read, in Boston, he thinks this is an adventure. You owe me so many explanations. Ethan saved the photo, sent back a heart emoji, and tried not to think about what would happen if he didn't survive the night. Marcus arrived in a town car at exactly 7:30, looking nervous in a suit that didn't quite fit right. I have a bad feeling about this, he said as Ethan slid into the back seat. You always have a bad feeling. That's why you're good at your job. Ethan poured them both whiskey from the car's bar. Relax, we're just going to a party. Andrew Zhao's estate was in Westchester, 40 minutes north of the city. The property sprawled across 20 acres of manicured grounds. The main house, a modern glass and steel monument to wealth. Security was visible, but not oppressive. Men in suits with earpieces, checking invitations at the gate, but smiling, polite. Ethan recognized the strategy. Make people feel important and watched simultaneously. Keep them off balance. Mr. Vale, Mr. Chen, welcome. A woman in an elegant black dress greeted them at the entrance. Mr. Zhao is in the main salon. Please follow me. The house was exactly what Ethan expected. Art that cost more than most people's homes. Furniture that looked uncomfortable because comfort wasn't the point. Floor-to-ceiling windows offering views of gardens that probably required a full-time staff to maintain. Guests mingled with champagne glasses, their laughter carefully calibrated to sound spontaneous. Ethan spotted Clara immediately, which meant he was looking too hard. She was carrying a tray of appetizers through the crowd, her face blank, her movements efficient. No one gave her a second glance. Andrew Zhao stood near the windows, holding court with a group of hedge fund managers. He saw Ethan and smiled, waving him over. Ethan, Marcus, so glad you could make it. Zhao's handshake was firm, his eyes sharp. Quite the trade this week. Everyone's talking about it. Lucky timing, Ethan said easily. Was it? Luck? Zhao's smile didn't waver, because it looked remarkably informed to me. The precision of it, the confidence. Sometimes you just know when a stock's overvalued. And sometimes you have help. Zhao gestured to a man standing nearby, older, gray-haired, wearing an expression of permanent suspicion. This is Richard Carver. He handles security for several of my ventures. Richard's been doing some interesting research into the Triton situation. Carver nodded at Ethan without warmth. Mr. Vale, your trading pattern before the Triton collapse was unusual. Large position, maximum leverage, perfect timing. Almost like you knew exactly when the FDA was going to release their letter. Marcus tensed beside him, but Ethan kept his expression neutral. I pay my analysts well to spot opportunities. They spotted one. Which analyst specifically? Carver asked. Team effort, you know how it is. I really don't. Carver's eyes were cold. See, insider trading leaves traces, communications, payments, relationships. We've been looking into everyone who could have known about that FDA investigation. It's a short list. Then I'm sure you'll find your leak eventually. Ethan sipped his champagne. Though I'd argue that good fundamental analysis could have predicted Triton's problems without any inside information. The signs were there if you knew where to look. Zhao laughed, but it sounded forced. Always the diplomat. Come, let me show you something. He led Ethan away from the crowd, Marcus trailing behind toward a hallway lined with more expensive art. They passed Clara in the hallway. She was taking empty glasses from a tray, eyes down, invisible. Zhao didn't even glance at her. I want to show you my office, Zhao said. I have a proposition for you. Every instinct Ethan had screamed danger, but he followed Zhao up a curved staircase to the second floor. The office was massive, dark wood, leather chairs, shelves full of first editions that had probably never been read. A desk dominated the space, its surface clear except for a single laptop. Zhao closed the door behind them. The smile dropped from his face. Let's stop playing games, he said quietly. You had inside information about Triton. I don't care where you got it. Honestly, I'm impressed you had the balls to act on it. What I want to know is what else you know. Marcus looked at Ethan, panicked. Ethan kept his focus on Zhao. I know that you're asking questions you shouldn't, Ethan said carefully. And I know that if you're this interested in how I made money, maybe you should be more interested in why Triton was committing fraud in the first place. Fraud is relative, Zhao said. What matters is profit. You made $4 billion on one trade. That kind of insight is valuable. I'm prepared to offer you a partnership, access to information you couldn't get otherwise, opportunities that would make Triton look like pocket change. In exchange for what? Loyalty, discretion, and answers. Zhao moved behind his desk. Starting with who told you about Triton. In the silence that followed, Ethan heard voices downstairs, the party continuing, oblivious. He thought about Clara somewhere in this house, searching for evidence. He thought about Dylan on a train to Boston. He thought about the choice in front of him, betray Clara and probably survive, or stay silent and see what Zhao did next. A waitress told me, Ethan said. Zhao blinked. What? At Aurelius. I was there with clients, we were joking around. I asked her for a stock tip as a joke. She told me about Triton, gave me specific details, the trial failures, the FDA investigation, everything. I thought she was crazy, but I had my team check it out, and she was right. It was close enough to the truth to be believable. Zhao studied him for a long moment. What was her name? I don't know. I didn't ask. She was just a waitress. Ethan shrugged. If you want to find her, try Aurelius. Dark hair, late 20s, worked the Friday night shift. Zhao picked up his phone, made a call. Richard, I need you to check the staff roster at Aurelius Restaurant. Women, late 20s, worked last Friday night. Get me names and addresses. He listened for a moment. Yes, now. He hung up, looked at Ethan. If you're lying to me, I'm not. I wish I was. Would be easier to explain to the SEC than random tip from someone who served me dinner. Ethan laughed, and it sounded genuine because part of him actually found this absurd. Honestly, I still don't know how she knew. Maybe she had a boyfriend at the FDA. Maybe she was a whistleblower. I didn't ask because I didn't want to know. Marcus had been silent through all this, but now he spoke up. It's true. Ethan called me that night, told me to dig into Triton. I thought he was drunk at first. Zhao's expression shifted, still suspicious, but less certain. His phone buzzed. He read the message, frowned. Aurelius employed 6 women matching that description last Friday. 4 of them have worked there for years. The other 2, he looked up at Ethan. One quit Saturday morning, left no forwarding address. The other called in sick and hasn't been back. Then I guess you have your suspects, Ethan said. I guess I do. Zhao set down his phone. You understand this doesn't end here. We'll find her, and when we do, we'll find out exactly what she knows and who she's told. Good luck. Like I said, I don't even know her name. Zhao studied him for another long moment, then smiled. It looked more predatory than friendly. You're either the luckiest man alive or the best liar I've ever met. I haven't decided which. Can it be both? That got a genuine laugh. Maybe. Come on, let's get you back to the party. We have more to discuss, but this isn't the time. He opened the door, gestured them out. As they walked back downstairs, Ethan's heart was hammering so hard he was sure everyone could hear it. He'd bought Clara time. Zhao would be looking at the wrong suspects, at least for a while. But he'd also confirmed that Zhao was willing to hunt someone down over this. The stakes were clear now. Back in the main salon, Ethan accepted another champagne and tried to look relaxed while his mind raced. Where was Clara? Had she found anything? How much longer could they keep this charade going? He spotted her near the kitchen entrance, still carrying trays, still invisible. As she passed him, something small and metallic slipped from her hand, hitting the floor near Ethan's foot. A flash drive. Ethan bent down smoothly, picked it up along with an imaginary dropped napkin, pocketed the drive in one fluid motion. No one noticed. Clara was already gone, disappeared into the kitchen. Marcus leaned close. What was that? Nothing. Come on, we should make our exit. Don't want to overstay our welcome. They found Zhao near the entrance, said their goodbyes with promises to discuss future opportunities. Zhao's handshake was firm, his smile wide, but his eyes remained cold and calculating. Drive safe, Ethan. We'll talk soon. In the car heading back to the city, Marcus finally spoke. Want to tell me what the hell is really going on? Not particularly. Ethan, Marcus, I'm serious. The less you know, the safer you are. Just trust me on this. I've trusted you for 6 years, but this is different. This isn't business. This is something else. Ethan looked at his oldest friend, his most loyal employee, and realized he was putting Marcus in danger too. Everyone around him was at risk because of choices Ethan had made. You should take a vacation, Ethan said quietly. A long one. Go somewhere the firm can't reach you. Marcus stared at him. You're serious? I've never been more serious about anything. What about the company? What about... I'll handle it. Just go. Please. Marcus was quiet for the rest of the drive. When they pulled up to his apartment, he paused before getting out. Whatever you're doing, don't do it alone, he said. You're smart, Ethan, but you're not invincible, and Dylan needs you. I know. After Marcus left, Ethan had the driver take him to the warehouse. Clara's car was already there. He found her inside, still in her catering uniform, sitting in front of her computers with her hands shaking. Did you get it? She asked. Ethan handed her the flash drive. She plugged it in immediately, and files began flooding her screens. Financial records, personnel files, security protocols. Clara's voice was shaking. Ethan, this is everything. He kept it all on his personal server. Payments to Clearwater Institute, transfer records for my father, communications with the people running the facility. She pulled up a video file. The image was grainy, time-stamped 3 weeks ago. It showed a small room with concrete walls and a single desk. At the desk sat a man in his 50s, gray-haired, thin to the point of gaunt. Michael Reed. Clara made a sound like she'd been punched. On the screen, her father was writing on a whiteboard covered in mathematical equations, his hand moving mechanically, his face empty. He's alive, she whispered. He's alive, and they've been using him like a machine. The video showed a door opening, someone entering. The camera angle didn't catch their face, but Ethan heard the voice. The market model needs refinement, Michael. The Asian indexes aren't responding as predicted. Then your parameters are wrong. Michael's voice was hoarse, like he didn't use it much. I've told you, the algorithm requires live data feeds, not your manipulated inputs. Garbage in, garbage out. We'll get you better data. Just make it work. And if I refuse, then we'll remind you why cooperation is in your best interest. The video ended. Clara was crying silently, tears running down her face as she stared at the frozen image of her father. We know where he is, Ethan said. We have the evidence of who's holding him. We can go to the authorities. No. Clara's voice was hard. The authorities are compromised. Half the people on Zhao's payroll are regulators, prosecutors, judges. The moment we hand this over, it disappears, and so do we. Then what do you want to do? Clara pulled up a schematic of the Clearwater Institute. We go get him, tomorrow night, you and me. That's suicide. You saw the security. I saw it. I also saw the guard rotation schedule, the access codes, the emergency protocols. Clara looked at him. I've been planning this for 3 years, Ethan. I just needed the resources to do it. Now I have them. Now I have you. Ethan thought about walking away, about taking his son and disappearing to some island where Andrew Zhao's reach couldn't find them, about letting Clara fight her war alone. But he looked at the screen, at Michael Reed's hollow eyes, and he knew he couldn't do that. Zhao had threatened Dylan, had made this personal. Running wouldn't keep them safe. It would just delay the inevitable. What do you need from me? Ethan asked. Clara pulled up more files. Money, equipment, and one more thing. She hesitated. I need you to make a trade, a big one. Something that will pull Zhao's attention away from Clearwater for exactly 4 hours tomorrow night. What kind of trade? The kind that crashes markets. Clara smiled, and it was fierce and slightly unhinged. Remember all those other companies I've been tracking, the ones connected to Zhao's network? Tomorrow at market close, we're going to short all of them simultaneously. Every corrupt company, every fraudulent operation, every single stock that Zhao's people control. We're going to destroy them all at once. Ethan did the math in his head. That's billions of dollars in coordinated trades. The SEC will notice. Hell, the FBI will notice. I'm counting on it. While Zhao's scrambling to contain the financial crisis and deal with federal investigators, his security at Clearwater will be minimal. That's our window. This is insane. This is the only way. Clara grabbed his hands. I've run every scenario. This is the one that works. We hit them so hard they can't respond to everything at once, and in that chaos, we get my father out. Ethan wanted to argue, to point out the 100 ways this could go wrong, but looking at Clara's face, desperate, determined, dangerous, he knew nothing he said would change her mind. Okay, he said, let's crash some markets. They spent the rest of the night preparing. Clara walked him through every company, every trade, every timing requirement. Ethan called in favors, mobilized funds, set up the most complex trading strategy he'd ever attempted. By dawn, they had it ready. A coordinated attack that would hit 17 companies simultaneously the moment the market closed tomorrow. This is going to work, Clara said, but she sounded like she was trying to convince herself. And if it doesn't, then at least we tried. At least we fought back. She looked at him. That's more than most people get. Ethan's phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. We found one of the waitresses. She doesn't know anything, but we're not done looking. Clara saw his expression. What is it? Zhao's hunting for you. He found one of the other women from Aurelius. What did they do to her? Text doesn't say, but Clara, he's not going to stop. If we don't finish this tomorrow, he'll find you eventually. I know. She deleted files from her computer, erasing evidence. Which is why tomorrow, we don't just get my father out. We bring down everyone involved. We make sure they can't come after us, can't cover this up, can't make us disappear like they did to him. How? Clara smiled. We're going to live stream the whole thing, every piece of evidence, every crime, broadcast to the world in real time. By the time Zhao realizes what's happening, it'll be too late to stop it. She pulled up a program on her computer, sophisticated streaming software connected to multiple social media platforms, news websites, federal law enforcement databases. When we go into Clearwater tomorrow night, every camera I'm wearing will feed into this system. The whole world is going to watch us expose them. They can't kill what everyone's already seen. Ethan stared at the setup, at this woman who'd thought of everything, who'd planned every detail of her revenge for 3 years, who was finally about to either win everything or lose it all. "You're terrifying," he said. "Good. So are they." Clara started packing equipment into a bag, cameras, communication devices, tools he didn't recognize. "Get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be the longest day of our lives." Ethan tried to sleep but couldn't. His mind kept cycling through everything that could go wrong, every variable they couldn't control. Around 6 a.m., he gave up and called Sarah. "We're okay," she said before he could speak. "Dylan's having fun. He thinks we're on vacation." "Good. Stay there. Don't come back until I call you." "Ethan, I love you both. Remember that." He hung up before she could respond, before he had to lie anymore. At 4 p.m., Ethan sat down at his trading terminal for the last time. Marcus had left the country, sent a text from Mexico saying he'd taken Ethan's advice. The rest of his team was home, unaware of what was about to happen. Clara stood behind him, watching the markets tick down toward close. "Ready?" she asked. "No," Ethan said honestly, "but let's do it anyway." At 4 p.m. exactly, he executed the trades. 17 companies, billions in short positions, every corrupt operation in Zhao's network, all dumped simultaneously. The numbers on his screen went insane. Stock prices plummeted. Trading halts triggered. News alerts exploded across financial websites. Within 5 minutes, every major outlet was reporting the crash. Within 10, the SEC had launched an investigation. Ethan's phone started ringing. Partners, investors, reporters, regulators. He ignored them all. Clara was already moving, heading for her car. It worked. Zhao's getting hit from every direction. His lawyers, his partners, federal investigators. Everyone wants answers. "Then let's go get your father." They drove north as the sun set. Clara's car loaded with equipment, Ethan wearing a bulletproof vest that Clara had produced from somewhere. The radio reported the market chaos, analysts calling it Black Tuesday, comparing it to historic crashes, demanding investigations. Andrew Zhao's name was mentioned 16 times in the first hour. "He knows," Clara said quietly. "He knows this was us." "Let him know. By the time he can do anything about it, we'll be done." Clearwater Institute appeared in their headlights around 8 p.m., a sprawling compound surrounded by high fences and security cameras. The main building was dark, except for a few windows on the upper floors. Clara handed Ethan a radio earpiece. "Stay close. Watch for guards. If shooting starts, run." "If shooting starts, we're both screwed." She smiled grimly. "Probably. But at least we'll go out fighting." They approached the fence line, Clara using wire cutters on a section she'd identified as a blind spot in the camera coverage. The fence came down with barely a sound, and they were through, moving across dark grounds toward the building. The first guard appeared 30 seconds later. Clara dropped him with a taser before Ethan even registered the movement. The guard went down silently, twitching. Clara was already moving again. A woman who'd clearly spent time preparing for this exact scenario. "How did you learn to do that?" Ethan whispered. "YouTube, mostly. Also some questionable self-defense classes." She picked the lock on a side door with practiced ease. 3 years is a long time to prepare. Inside, the facility was sterile and quiet. White walls, fluorescent lights, the smell of disinfectant. Clara consulted the schematic on her phone, leading them through corridors toward the secure wing where they kept high-value patients. They passed rooms with barred windows, saw shadows moving inside. This wasn't just a research facility, it was a prison. "Second floor," Clara whispered. "Room 217. They took the stairs 2 at a time. At the landing, another guard appeared, and this time Ethan tackled him before Clara could react. They went down hard, the guard's radio clattering away. Ethan had never been in a fight that wasn't carefully choreographed in a boxing gym, but adrenaline and desperation made up for skill. The guard got a punch in. Ethan felt his lip split before Clara hit the man with the taser again. "Come on," she gasped, already running. Room 217 was at the end of the hallway, a heavy door with a keypad lock. Clara punched in the code from Zhao's files. The lock clicked. The door opened. Inside, sitting at a desk covered in mathematical equations, was Michael Reed. He looked up slowly, like he'd forgotten what sudden movements felt like. When he saw Clara, his face went through a dozen emotions in 3 seconds. Shock, disbelief, fear, hope. "Clara?" His voice was barely a whisper. "Hi, Dad," she said, and then she was across the room hugging him, both of them crying. Ethan stood in the doorway, watching, and realized he was crying too. But they didn't have time for reunions. Alarms were blaring now. Their entry had been detected. Security was responding. "We have to go," Ethan said. "Now." Michael stood on shaky legs. He looked worse than his video had shown, gaunt, exhausted, broken in ways that might never heal, but his eyes were clear. "You came for me," he said to Clara. "I told you to run." "I've never been good at following orders." Clara grabbed his arm, supporting him. "Can you walk?" "I can run if I have to." They ran. The corridors were filling with guards now, shouts echoing off the walls. Clara led them toward a different exit, one she'd planned as their escape route. Ethan brought up the rear, his heart hammering, expecting bullets any second. They burst through an emergency exit into the night. Alarms screamed. Floodlights came on, turning night into day. Clara's car was 50 yards away across open ground. "Go!" Ethan shouted. They ran. Michael stumbled, nearly fell, but Clara and Ethan grabbed him, half carrying him toward the car. Behind them, doors burst open, guards emerging. Someone shouted for them to stop. Then someone started shooting. Bullets hit the ground around them, kicking up dirt. Ethan heard one whistle past his ear, close enough to feel the displaced air. They reached the car, threw Michael into the back seat. Clara dove into the driver's seat. The engine roared to life. More bullets hit the car. One shattered the rear window, another punctured a tire. The car lurched, but Clara floored it anyway, the damaged tire screaming, and they were moving, accelerating away from the facility. Ethan looked back. Guards were running for vehicles, preparing pursuit, but Clara was already calling someone, shouting coordinates and codes. "It's done! We have him! Stream everything! Do it now!" On her phone, Ethan could see the live stream going active. Camera feeds from inside Clearwater, the evidence files from Zhao's server, everything uploading to multiple platforms simultaneously. Within seconds, thousands of people were watching. Then tens of thousands, then millions. The truth finally was out. Clara's car made it 3 miles before the damaged tire gave out completely. They abandoned it on the side of a rural road, flagging down a passing truck. The driver, a woman in her 60s hauling produce, took one look at their desperate faces and didn't ask questions. "Get in the back," she said. "I'll take you wherever you need to go." They huddled in the truck bed among crates of apples. Michael wrapped in Ethan's jacket, all of them shaking from adrenaline and shock and victory. "We did it," Clara whispered. "We actually did it." Her phone was exploding with notifications. The live stream had gone viral, news organizations were picking up the story, federal agents were raiding Clearwater Institute. Andrew Zhao's empire was collapsing in real time. Ethan pulled out his own phone. Hundreds of missed calls, thousands of texts, and one message that made him smile despite everything, from Sarah. "I don't know what you did, but the news is calling you a hero. Dylan wants to know if you're famous now." He texted back, "Tell him his dad just did something important. I'll explain when I see him. Love you both." In the back of the truck, heading toward an uncertain future, Ethan looked at Clara and her father, finally reunited after 3 years of hell. "What happens now?" he asked. Clara leaned against her father, exhausted. "Now we survived long enough to tell the whole story." Michael Reed spoke for the first time since they'd escaped, his voice stronger than Ethan expected. "Now we make sure they can never do this to anyone else again." Above them, stars appeared through breaking clouds. Behind them, sirens wailed in the distance. And ahead, somewhere in the darkness, a new beginning waited, if they could survive long enough to reach it. The truck driver dropped them at a rest stop 40 miles from Clearwater, refusing the money Ethan tried to press into her hand. "Just promise me you'll finish what you started," she said, looking at Michael's hollow face. "Whatever they did to him, make sure everyone knows." Clara promised, and they watched the truck disappear into the pre-dawn darkness before walking to the parking lot where Felix sat waiting in a stolen van, looking simultaneously terrified and exhilarated. "You're all over the news," he said as they climbed in. "I mean everywhere. The live stream hit 20 million viewers before the platform started trying to take it down. But it's too late. People downloaded it, mirrored it. It's everywhere now." "Good," Clara said, settling her father in the back. "That's exactly what we need." Felix drove while Clara monitored her phone, watching the fallout spread like wildfire. Federal agents had surrounded Zhao's estate. The SEC had frozen assets across 17 companies. 3 senators were calling for emergency hearings. The story was too big to bury, too documented to deny. But Ethan's phone told a darker story. Messages from unknown numbers, all variations on the same theme. You're dead. We know where your son is. This isn't over. Clara saw his expression. They're trying to scare you. It's working. Ethan showed her one message that made his blood run cold. A photo of Dylan's school, time-stamped 30 minutes ago. That's impossible, Clara said. Sarah took him to Boston. They know where we sent them. They know everything. Ethan was already calling Sarah, heart hammering. She answered on the first ring, breathless.
Ethan, thank God. There are men at the hotel. They came to the front desk asking for us by name. We're locked in the room. I called the police, but what room number? 412, but get Dylan into the bathroom. Lock the door. Don't open it for anyone except me or the police. Ethan looked at Felix. How fast can you get to Boston? 2 hours if I break every speed limit. Break them.
Felix hit the accelerator. Clara was already on another phone calling someone Ethan didn't recognize. Marcus, yes, that Marcus. I need a team in Boston. 412 at the Harborview. Armed men threatening a woman and child. Yes, I know it's 6 a.m. I don't care what it costs. She hung up, saw Ethan's expression. I told you, I have people. They'll get there before us. How do you have people? You're a waitress. I was a lot of things before I became a waitress. Clara moved to sit beside her father, who'd been silent through all of this, watching everything with the wariness of someone who'd learned not to trust rescue. Dad, you okay? Michael Reed's voice was rough. Define okay. I'm out of that place. I'm with you, but these people, Clara, you don't know what they're capable of, what they've built. This isn't just Zhao. He's middle management. The real power is higher up, people you've never heard of, who don't appear in any files. Then tell us about them, Ethan said. Everything you know. Michael closed his eyes, and for a moment Ethan thought he wouldn't answer. Then he started talking, and the story that emerged was worse than anything they'd imagined. The organization didn't have a name, names left trails. It existed in the spaces between legitimate business and criminal enterprise, populated by people who'd learned that the best crimes were perfectly legal if you wrote the laws yourself. They'd been operating for 30 years, maybe longer, manipulating markets, installing politicians, eliminating threats. Silvercrest was just one operation, Michael said. They have dozens. Pharmaceutical companies testing drugs on unwitting populations. Defense contractors selling weapons to both sides of conflicts. Tech firms harvesting data for private intelligence networks. And my algorithm, his voice cracked. They wanted it because it could predict market movements with 93% accuracy. That's not just money. That's power. The ability to crash economies, start wars, decide who wins and who loses before the game even starts. And you wouldn't give it to them, Clara said quietly. I gave them a version, a corrupted one. Every prediction I fed them had a 3% error rate that compounded over time. Small enough they wouldn't notice immediately, but significant enough to sabotage any long-term operation. Michael smiled grimly. They thought they were using me. I was feeding them poison disguised as medicine. Ethan stared at this broken man who'd spent 3 years in captivity, deliberately undermining his captors. That's why they kept you alive. They knew something was wrong, but couldn't figure out what. And they thought that given enough time, I'd fix it, or that they could break me into compliance. Michael's hands were shaking. They tried everything. Isolation, drugs, psychological manipulation. They showed me fabricated evidence that Clara was dead, that the world thought I was a criminal who'd killed himself, that no one was coming for me. Clara grabbed his hand. I never stopped looking. I know that now, but for 3 years, I didn't know if you'd survived, if you'd given up, if they'd gotten to you too. Tears ran down Michael's face. The only thing that kept me going was the hope that maybe, somewhere, you were still fighting. Felix's voice cut through the moment. We've got a problem. He pointed at the rearview mirror. 3 black SUVs were closing fast, weaving through early morning traffic. How did they find us? Clara demanded. Doesn't matter. They're here. Felix took an exit at the last second, tires screaming. The SUVs followed. Ethan looked back. Through the tinted windows, he could see shapes moving. Can you lose them? In this piece of junk? Not a chance. Felix was driving like a maniac now, running red lights, cutting through parking lots. I can buy us time, but one of the SUVs pulled alongside, and Ethan saw the window rolling down, saw the gun. Get down! He shouted, throwing himself over Michael as bullets shattered the van's side windows. Glass exploded inward. The van swerved. Felix was screaming something Ethan couldn't hear over the gunfire. Clara had pulled out a gun from somewhere. But where did she keep getting weapons? And was returning fire through the broken window. The SUV dropped back, but the other two were still coming. There? Clara pointed at an upcoming bridge. Get underneath. There's a service road. Felix yanked the wheel hard right. The van tilting so far Ethan thought they'd roll, but somehow they stayed upright and plunged down an embankment onto a narrow maintenance road that ran beneath the highway. The SUVs tried to follow, but the first one misjudged the angle and crashed into a concrete pillar, metal crumpling. The other two made it, though, and now they were in a concrete tunnel with no exits, just a long stretch of road leading toward a maintenance facility. Felix, I really hope you have a plan, Ethan said. Working on it. The kid was white-knuckled on the steering wheel, pushing the van beyond its capabilities. Ahead, the tunnel opened into a service area with multiple vehicles parked, maintenance trucks, construction equipment. Felix spun the wheel, sending the van into a controlled skid that brought them behind a massive dump truck. He killed the engine. Everybody out, run for the access stairs. There, see them? They piled out, Michael moving slower than the rest, but keeping up. Behind them, the SUVs roared into the service area. Ethan grabbed Michael's arm, helping him toward the stairs while Clara and Felix provided cover, though neither of them seemed particularly trained in actual combat. They made it to the stairs as bullets pinged off metal railings. Up, always up, Ethan's legs burning, Michael gasping for breath. They emerged onto a city street, Boston. They'd made it to Boston. Morning commuters staring as four desperate people burst from a utility access point. Clara was already hailing a taxi, shoving money at the driver before he could protest. Harborview Hotel. There's an extra 100 if you get there in 5 minutes. The driver looked at them, disheveled, bleeding, terrified, and made a decision. Get in. They crammed into the back, the taxi peeling away as their pursuers emerged from the access point behind them. The driver wove through traffic with the casual disregard of someone who'd seen it all, asking no questions, just driving. Your people, Ethan gasped at Clara. Are they at the hotel? They should be. I haven't heard back, which either means they're busy or... Don't finish that sentence. The Harborview appeared ahead, its glass facade reflecting the rising sun. Police cars were parked out front, which meant either Sarah had gotten through to them or something had already happened. Ethan threw money at the driver and ran for the entrance before the taxi fully stopped. The lobby was chaos. Hotel security arguing with two men in suits who looked distinctly uncomfortable. A manager trying to calm everyone down. And there, emerging from the elevator, was Sarah with Dylan pressed against her side. Dad! Dylan saw Ethan and broke free, running across the lobby. Ethan caught him, lifted him, buried his face in his son's hair and tried not to cry. Are you okay? Did anyone hurt you? Mom. Sarah says we're on an adventure and we met police and there were loud noises in the hallway, but we stayed in the bathroom like you said, and Dylan was talking a mile a minute, the way he did when he was scared, but trying to be brave. Sarah reached them, her face pale. Those men, they tried to force open the door. If the police hadn't arrived, she looked at Clara, at Michael, at Felix. Who are these people? What have you gotten us into? I'll explain everything, but right now we need to leave. All of us. Together. One of the suited men approached, younger than Ethan expected with the bearing of someone military. Mr. Vale? I'm Eric Chen. Clara called us. We've secured the immediate area, but there are more coming. We need to move you to a safe location. Who are you? Ethan demanded. Private security. We specialize in extraction and protection for people in situations exactly like yours. Eric looked at Clara. Though I'll admit this is the first time someone's paid us with cryptocurrency from an anonymous account while actively being shot at. Will you take the job? Clara asked. Already did. The moment I saw the news about Clearwater and realized what you'd exposed, I made some calls. You've got friends you don't know about, Ms. Reed. A lot of people have been waiting for someone to finally take these bastards down. Eric gestured toward the exit. We have vehicles waiting,
Secure location upstate. From there we can plan next steps.
They moved as a group toward the exit, Eric's team forming a protective cordon.
Dylan clung to Ethan, asking questions Ethan couldn't answer yet. Sarah walked beside them, still demanding explanations that would have to wait.
Outside, 3 armored vehicles waited. Not military, but close enough. They loaded in, and Ethan found himself sitting beside Michael Reed, watching this stranger who'd sacrificed everything, who'd endured torture and isolation and still managed to fight back in the only way he could. "Thank you," Michael said quietly, "for helping her, for risking everything when you didn't have to." "I had to," Ethan said. "They threatened my son, made it personal. It's always personal. That's what people like Zhao never understand. They think everything's a transaction, that everyone has a price. They can't comprehend people who fight for something bigger than profit." Michael looked at Dylan, who'd fallen asleep against Ethan's shoulder. "You have something worth fighting for. Don't ever let them take that from you." The convoy drove for 2 hours, eventually pulling up to what looked like an abandoned industrial complex. But inside it was fully operational. A safe house equipped with everything they needed. Communication equipment, secure computers, medical supplies. A doctor examined Michael while Clara coordinated with Eric's team. Sarah cornered Ethan in a side room. "Start talking," she said, "and don't you dare lie to me." So Ethan told her everything. The waitress, the Triton trade, the conspiracy, the rescue from Clearwater. Sarah listened without interrupting, her expression cycling through disbelief, horror, and fury. "You risked Dylan's life," she said when he finished. "I know. You bet everything we have on the word of a stranger. I know. And now we're in hiding from billionaire criminals who've apparently killed before." "I know." Ethan met her eyes. "I'm sorry. I thought I could control it, thought I was smart enough to stay ahead. I was wrong." Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Then she slapped him, hard, the crack echoing in the small room. Dylan stirred but didn't wake. "Don't you ever," she said quietly, "put him in danger like that again. I don't care how important it seems. I don't care if the whole financial system is corrupt. He is 7 years old and he needs his father alive and present, not dead or in prison or on the run from criminals." "You're right. I know I'm right." But her anger was fading, replaced by exhaustion. "So what happens now? We can't hide here forever." "No, but Clara has a plan. Clara has gotten you into this mess." Clara's father spent 3 years being tortured because he tried to expose these people. She's lost everything fighting them. I trust her. Sarah studied his face. "You care about her." It wasn't a question. Ethan thought about lying, then realized he was tired of lying. "She's the bravest person I've ever met. And yes, I care about her. But Dylan comes first. Always. Then make sure whatever happens next, he's protected. Because if you don't, I'll take him somewhere you'll never find us, and you'll never see him again. Understand?" Ethan understood. In the main room, Clara was setting up a video conference with someone. Felix was frantically typing, pulling up files and data. Michael sat wrapped in a blanket, looking like he'd aged 20 years in 3. "What's the plan?" Ethan asked. Clara looked up. "We go public, completely public. The live stream from Clearwater was just the beginning. Now we release everything, all the files from Zhao's server, all the evidence Dad can provide, everything Felix found in the Providence Holdings accounts. We flood the media, the internet, law enforcement, make it impossible to suppress. And then what? These people have killed to protect their secrets. You think public exposure will stop them? No, but it'll limit their options. Right now, they can make us disappear quietly. Once the whole world knows the story, killing us becomes a confirmation of everything we've said. It's not protection, but it's leverage." Eric joined them. "She's right. In my experience, these organizations thrive on secrecy. Exposure is the only weapon that actually hurts them. But you need to understand, going public like this means giving up any chance of a normal life. You'll be targets forever. Witnesses, whistleblowers. Every move you make will be scrutinized." "I lost my normal life 3 years ago," Clara said. "This is just making it official." Michael spoke up, his voice stronger now. "There's something else. Something I haven't told you yet because I wasn't sure we'd survive long enough for it to matter. But if we're really doing this, if we're going to war with these people, you need to know about the others." "What others?" Ethan asked. "The other people they've taken. The other prisoners at Clearwater." Michael pulled out a piece of paper from his pocket. "Creased, worn, covered in tiny handwriting. I kept a list. Names I heard, voices through the walls, people who disappeared from the news and ended up in that facility. Scientists, journalists, whistleblowers. At least 30 people over the 3 years I was there. Clara took the list with shaking hands. You're saying there are 30 more people still trapped there?
Were. I don't know if the raid freed them or if they were moved before the agents arrived. But yes, I'm not the only one they've been using, and if we're going to expose this, we need to find them all. The room went quiet as everyone absorbed this. The conspiracy wasn't just corrupt financial dealings. It was kidnapping, false imprisonment, probably murder. The scale of it was staggering. Felix broke the silence. I've been monitoring police communications from the Clearwater raid. They found evidence of at least 15 occupied rooms in the secure wing, but most of them were empty by the time agents breached. Either the occupants were moved or they never left, Clara finished grimly. We need those files. Everything Clearwater has on their prisoners. Already on it. Felix's fingers flew across his keyboard. I'm in their backup servers now. They thought they wiped everything, but amateurs always forget about redundant systems. Give me an hour. While Felix worked, Eric's team set up a press conference. Not traditional media. They'd be too easy to control. Instead, they coordinated with independent journalists, documentary filmmakers, advocacy groups, anyone who'd help spread the story beyond where traditional gatekeepers could suppress it. Clara worked with her father, compiling his testimony into a coherent narrative. Ethan watched them together, saw the way Michael's hand shook when he talked about certain memories, the way Clara steadied him with just her presence. They'd both been broken by this, but they were rebuilding each other piece by piece. Dylan woke up asking for breakfast, and Sarah took him to the kitchen, keeping him away from the worst of the planning. But the kid was smart. He knew something was wrong, knew his father was in trouble. Dad, are we in danger? Dylan asked when Ethan came to check on him. Ethan knelt down to his son's level. Yeah, buddy, we are. But we're also doing something important, something that's going to help a lot of people. Like a superhero? Ethan smiled despite everything. More like regular people trying to do the right thing, which is harder than being a superhero, honestly. Is that lady helping us? The one who looks sad? Dylan meant Clara. Ethan glanced toward where she sat with Michael, both of them bent over documents. Yeah, she's helping us a lot. Then we should help her too. That's what heroes do. Out of the mouths of children, Ethan hugged his son. You're absolutely right, Felix shouted from the other room. Got it. All of Clearwater's files, patient records, transfer orders, everything. They crowded around his computer. The files confirmed Michael's list and added 20 more names. People who'd been held at Clearwater over the past decade, some for years, some for just weeks before being transferred elsewhere or released, or the files didn't always say. But there was something else. Transfer orders, all signed by the same person, Robert Haverton, Director of Operations. Who's Robert Haverton? Ethan asked. Clara pulled up a search and a face appeared on screen. Distinguished, white-haired, the kind of man who looked like he belonged on a corporate board or in a Senate office. According to his public biography, he was a retired admiral who now consulted for various defense and intelligence contractors. He's the architect, Michael said quietly. I never saw his face, but I heard his name. He was above Zhao, above everyone, the one who gave the orders. Clara was already digging deeper, pulling up connections, financial ties, everything she could find. Robert Haverton wasn't just connected to Clearwater. He sat on the boards of 9 different companies, advised 3 senators, and had consulting contracts with organizations across the military-industrial complex. He's untouchable, Eric said, reading over her shoulder. You can't go after someone like this without proof so airtight that even his political connections can't save him. Then we get proof. Clara looked at her father. Dad, you said you were feeding them corrupted data. Can you prove that? Show exactly how you sabotaged their algorithm? Michael nodded slowly. I kept notes, hidden in the equations I was writing. To anyone else, it would look like standard mathematical notation. But there's a pattern, a code I used to document everything they made me do, every prediction I deliberately corrupted. If I had access to the original algorithm and the data I fed them, I could prove that every single market manipulation they attempted using my work was built on poisoned information. Which means every trade they made was based on fraud, Ethan said. Every profit,
Every prediction. All of it illegal. And traceable, Felix added. If we can match the algorithm outputs to actual trades, we can build a chain of evidence linking Haverton directly to insider trading, market manipulation, probably a dozen other financial crimes. Clara was already making calls, coordinating with the journalists, setting up the data dump. We release everything at once. The Clearwater files, the trading records, Dad's testimony about the algorithm sabotage, the list of missing people. We make it a story so big it can't be ignored. When? Ethan asked. Tonight, 6 p.m., every platform simultaneously. Clara looked around at all of them. This is it. Once we do this, there's no taking it back. Everyone involved becomes a target. If anyone wants out, now's the time. Sarah spoke from the kitchen doorway. What about Dylan? What about keeping him safe? Eric answered. We can arrange protection. Get him somewhere remote, under heavy guard, until this resolves. And how long will that take? Sarah demanded. Weeks? Months? Years? You're asking me to let my nephew grow up in hiding because his father decided to be a hero. I'm asking you to help save 30 people who are still being held prisoner, Clara said quietly. I'm asking you to help expose people who've killed, tortured, and destroyed lives for profit. I know it's not fair to you or to Dylan, but nothing about this is fair. Sarah looked at Ethan, at Clara, at Michael's haunted face. Then she closed her eyes. Fine, but after this is over, you all owe him a childhood. A normal, boring, safe childhood where the most dangerous thing he deals with is homework and hurt feelings. Understand? Everyone understood. They spent the rest of the day preparing. Felix compiled the data dump, creating multiple redundant uploads to ensure it couldn't be taken down. Michael recorded his testimony, walking through 3 years of captivity with the careful precision of someone who'd had nothing but time to memorize every detail. Clara coordinated with journalists around the world, making sure the story would break everywhere simultaneously. And Ethan sat with Dylan, trying to explain in 7-year-old terms why they had to do this, why it mattered, why sometimes the right thing was also the hard thing. Will the bad people go to jail? Dylan asked. I hope so, buddy. And then will we go home? Ethan didn't have an answer for that. Home, his penthouse, his office, his old life, felt like it belonged to someone else now. He'd crossed too many lines, seen too much, changed too fundamentally to go back to being the ruthless billionaire who'd walked into Aurelius a week ago. I don't know where home is anymore, he admitted. Dylan considered this seriously. Home is where we're together. Mom used to say that. Out of the mouths of children, indeed. At 5:30 p.m., they gathered around the computers for the final check. Everything was ready. The data was compiled, the journalists were standing by, the upload systems were primed. Clara looked at her father. Last chance to back out. I've been waiting 3 years for this, Michael said. Let's burn it all down. At exactly 6 p.m., Felix hit enter. The files went live across 50 platforms simultaneously. News websites, social media, independent journalism sites, document repositories. Within seconds, people were downloading them, reading them, sharing them. Within minutes, the story was trending worldwide. Within an hour, the first arrest warrants were being issued. They watched it unfold in real time. Robert Haverton's name started trending. Journalists were calling for comment. Politicians were scrambling to distance themselves. The companies on Haverton's boards were hemorrhaging stock value. And somewhere, in offices and boardrooms and private jets, very powerful people were realizing they'd lost control of the narrative. Eric's phone rang. He listened, his expression darkening, then hung up. We've got a problem. Haverton's not running. He's mobilizing. Private security forces, legal teams probably calling in favors from every politician he's ever bought. And he's looking for you, all of you. How long do we have? Clara asked. Hours, maybe. This safe house is secure, but if he's willing to bring enough force, nowhere's really safe. Then we move again, Ethan said. Keep moving until the law catches up with him. The law might not catch up, Eric said bluntly. Men like Haverton have been above the law their entire lives. Even with this evidence, he might slip through. Plea bargains, immunity deals, technicalities. I've seen it before. Claire's face hardened. Not this time. This time, we make sure he can't run and can't hide. This time, we finish it. How? Ethan asked. She pulled up a file Felix had found buried in the Clearwater data. Haverton has a command center, a private facility in upstate New York where he coordinates all his operations. It's not in his name, obviously, registered to another shell company. But according to these files, it's where he keeps everything. Backups of all his data, communications with his network, physical evidence that even the digital dump won't capture. You want to break into a military-grade facility owned by a man who's already killed to protect his secrets, Eric said flatly. That's not rescue or exposure. That's suicide. Maybe, Clara said, or maybe it's the only way to guarantee he can't destroy the evidence before it reaches court. Right now, he's scrambling to cover his tracks, to destroy records, to eliminate anyone who can testify against him. If we can get into that facility before he does, if we can secure the physical evidence and live stream it the way we did at Clearwater, he'll have nothing left to hide behind. Ethan looked at Michael. What do you think? The older man was quiet for a moment, then spoke. I think I've spent 3 years being their prisoner. I think there are still 30 people out there who might be suffering the same fate. And I think that if we don't finish this now, completely and permanently, then everything we've risked will have been for nothing. That's not an answer, Sarah said. Yes, it is, Michael replied. It's the only answer that matters. We end this, or we spend the rest of our lives looking over our shoulders, waiting for them to come for us again. I'm done being afraid. I'm done running. I'm done letting these people win. Clara looked at Ethan. I can't ask you to do this. You have Dylan to think about. Dylan's exactly why I have to do this, Ethan interrupted. Because I want him to grow up in a world where people like Haverton face consequences, where power doesn't mean immunity, where doing the right thing actually matters. He looked at his son, who'd fallen asleep on the couch, innocent and trusting. Then he looked at Sarah. Take him somewhere safe, somewhere they'll never find him. And if I don't come back... Don't, Sarah said, tears in her eyes. Don't you dare finish that sentence. You come back. Whatever it takes, you come back to him. Ethan promised, knowing he might not be able to keep it. Eric sighed. If you're really doing this, then I'm coming with you. My team too. We didn't sign up for this level of crazy, but I'll be damned if I let a bunch of amateurs try to assault a fortified compound without backup. Felix raised his hand timidly. I should probably stay here and coordinate technical support from a safe distance. Smart kid, Eric said. Clara was already pulling up schematics of Haverton's facility, planning the assault with the same methodical precision she'd applied to everything else. Ethan watched her work and realized she'd been preparing for this moment for 3 years. Every waitress shift, every night in her warehouse, every piece of evidence she'd collected, it had all been leading to this, one final confrontation with the man who'd destroyed her family. And Ethan was going to help her finish it, no matter the cost. Outside, the sun was setting. The news was still exploding with the data dump. And somewhere in an abandoned facility in upstate New York, Robert Haverton was preparing for war. So were they. They said goodbye to Dylan while he slept. Ethan kissed his son's forehead, memorized the sound of his breathing, tried not to think about all the ways this could end badly. Sarah stood in the doorway, arms crossed, crying silently. I hate you for this, she whispered. I know. But I understand why you're doing it. I know that too. She hugged him then, fierce and desperate. If you die, I'll never forgive you. Fair enough. Michael was saying his own goodbyes to Clara, though theirs were different. They'd already lost 3 years. Another separation felt almost routine, except for the very real possibility that this one might be permanent. You don't have to come, Clara told her father. You've done enough, more than enough. I'm not letting you finish this alone. I started this fight when I refused to give them the algorithm. Time I saw it through. Michael's hands were steadier now, his voice stronger. 3 days out of Clearwater, and he was already remembering how to be human again. Besides, someone needs to identify the prisoners if we find them. I'm the only one who knows their voices. Eric's team loaded equipment into 3 unmarked vans, weapons, tactical gear, communication systems, and enough explosives to make Ethan deeply uncomfortable. Eric saw his expression and almost smiled. We're not planning to blow anything up, he said, but Haverton doesn't know that. Sometimes the threat of destruction is more useful than actual destruction. You've done this before, Ethan observed. I spent 12 years in military intelligence before I went private. Learned a lot about how powerful men protect themselves. Usually it's with layers of security, redundant systems, fail-safes. Eric checked his weapon with practiced efficiency. But every fortress has a weakness. We just need to find Haverton's. Felix had hacked into the facility's blueprints, pulling up security camera placements, guard rotations, power grid configurations. The compound was built like a bunker, reinforced concrete, limited entry points, surveillance everywhere. There's a ventilation system, Felix said, highlighting it on the screen. Big enough for a person, barely, connects to the main server room. If someone could get in through there, someone small, Clara said. Someone who spent 3 years learning how to be invisible. No, Ethan said immediately. That's too dangerous. You'd be alone, unarmed. I'll be where I've always been. In the spaces between their attention, doing what needs to be done while they're looking elsewhere. Clara met his eyes. This is what I've been training for, Ethan. Let me do it. He wanted to argue, wanted to find another way, wanted to wrap her in protective layers and keep her away from danger. But he recognized that look in her eyes, the same determination he'd seen when she'd walked into Zhao's party as a waitress, when she'd live-streamed their escape from Clearwater, when she'd spent 3 years building a case against people who could destroy her with a phone call. Clara Reed had spent too long being underestimated. He wasn't going to make that mistake. Okay, he said, but I'm going in with Eric's team. If something goes wrong, I want to be close enough to help. If something goes wrong, you run, Clara said. Promise me. Dylan needs his father more than I need a hero. Ethan promised, lying through his teeth the way she'd probably lied to him about running if things went bad at Clearwater. They drove in silence through the night, 3 vans full of desperate people planning to assault a facility owned by one of the most powerful men in America. When Ethan really thought about it, the absurdity was staggering. A week ago, he'd been a billionaire worried about quarterly earnings. Now he was wearing tactical gear and planning a break-in that would either expose massive corruption or get them all killed. Michael sat beside him, staring out the window at the darkness sliding past. You ever think about what comes after? Michael asked quietly. After we expose Haverton? After we rescue the prisoners? After we stop running? After the trials and the media circus and the federal investigations? Michael looked at him. What do you do when the fight's over and you're just a person again? Ethan had been asking himself the same question. His company was probably in ruins. His reputation was either that of a hero or a criminal depending on who you asked. His penthouse, his lifestyle, everything he'd built, it all felt like it belonged to a stranger. I don't know, he admitted. Maybe I figure out what actually matters, not money, not power. Something real. Michael smiled sadly. That's what I thought too, after Silvercrest collapsed. I thought if I exposed them, if I testified, I could start over, build something meaningful. Instead, they took 3 years of my life and turned me into a cautionary tale. Ishiyaz. He paused. But you know what kept me sane in that cell? Not hope that I'd be rescued, not thoughts of revenge, just memories of Clara as a kid, her first day of school, her college graduation, the way she'd laugh at my terrible jokes. The small moments that make up a life. You're saying the fight doesn't matter? I'm saying the fight is necessary, but the moments are what you're fighting for. Don't lose sight of that. Michael looked toward where Clara sat in the front van, checking equipment with methodical precision. She hasn't had a small moment in 3 years. Everything's been survival, strategy, preparation. When this is over, if we survive, she'll need to remember how to just live. You both will. The convoy pulled off the highway onto a service road that wound through dense forest. According to the GPS, Haverton's facility was 3 miles ahead, hidden in the woods like a bunker from some paranoid Cold War fantasy. Eric's voice came through their earpieces. Final check. Clara, you're on infiltration. Ethan and Michael, you're with Team 2. We breach the main entrance, draw their security response. Team 3 takes the vehicle bay, cuts off any escape routes. Felix, you're jamming their communications and looping security feeds from remote. Everyone clear? A chorus of affirmatives. Ethan's heart was hammering so hard he could hear it in his ears. They parked a mile out and approached on foot, moving through trees in the pre-dawn darkness. The facility appeared gradually, first just lights through the forest, then the outline of buildings, then the full complex. It was bigger than Ethan had expected. Multiple structures connected by covered walkways, everything surrounded by a 10-foot fence topped with razor wire. Motion sensors on the fence, Eric whispered. Cameras on the buildings. At least 2 roving patrols. This guy's serious about security. Clara was already moving toward the ventilation intake on the facility's north side, a rusted grate set into the foundation. Eric's demolitions expert worked quietly, removing the grate without triggering any alarms. The opening looked impossibly small. "You sure you can fit?" Ethan asked. Clara gave him a look that suggested he was being ridiculous, then slipped through the opening like water, disappearing into the darkness. Ethan stared at the empty space where she'd been, fighting the urge to call her back. "She'll be fine," Michael said quietly. "She's the toughest person I know." Eric's team moved into position. Ethan checked the gun they'd given him, a weapon he'd only ever fired at a range and poorly, and tried to remember the basic training Eric had provided during the drive. Point, shoot, try not to die. Simple enough in theory. "In 3 minutes, we breach," Eric said. "The goal is noise and chaos. Make them think we're a full assault team. Meanwhile, Clara gets to the server room, grabs the data, and we extract before reinforcements arrive. Questions?" "Just one," Ethan said. "What if Haverton's not here? What if this is all automated security and we're risking our lives for an empty building?" "Then we get the data anyway and leave him with nothing to hide behind." Eric checked his watch. 2 minutes. Through his earpiece, Ethan heard Clara's breathing, steady, controlled, moving through the ventilation system. Felix's voice cut in periodically with directions, guiding her through the maze of ducts toward the server room. 30 feet ahead, then down," Felix said. "You should see a grate overlooking the servers." "I see it," Claire whispered. "No guards visible. Wait, there's someone at a desk. Can't tell if it's Haverton." Ethan's blood ran cold. If Haverton was there, if he was armed, or had personal security— "1 minute," Eric said. Claire's voice again. "He's on the phone. Looks angry. I can't hear what he's saying, but hold on. He's pulling up something on his computer. Images, security footage. He's watching the perimeter." "He knows we're here," Eric said flatly. "How?" "Doesn't matter. We're committed." Michael chambered around in his own weapon, movements mechanical, like muscle memory from another life. "Let's finish this." Eric gave the signal. The first explosion was flashbangs, light and noise without real damage, designed to disorient. The second was shaped charges on the main door, blowing it inward in a shower of metal and smoke. Eric's team poured through, weapons raised, shouting commands. Alarms shrieked, lights blazed. Armed guards appeared from multiple directions, and suddenly the carefully planned infiltration became chaos and gunfire. Ethan followed Team 2 through a side entrance, Michael beside him, moving through corridors that smelled like gun oil and fear. They passed offices, storage rooms, what looked like a small armory. The facility was massive, labyrinthine. "Clara, status?" Ethan shouted into his mic. "In the server room. Downloading everything. But Haverton, he's not running. He's uploading something, deleting files. I need to stop him." "Negative," Eric's voice cut in. "Extract with the data. Don't engage." "He's destroying evidence!" Clara's voice was sharp with desperation. "All the prisoner transfer records, the financial trails. He's wiping it all. If I don't stop him now, we lose everything." Ethan made a decision that was probably going to get him killed. "I'm coming to you." "Where are you?" "East Wing, 2nd floor, server room marked B7. "Ethan, don't—" He was already running, leaving Team 2 behind, Michael cursing and following. They navigated by pure instinct and Felix's frantic directions through the earpiece, dodging guards, returning fire when necessary, moving deeper into the facility. The server room door was reinforced steel with a biometric lock. Ethan shot the scanner, probably stupid, probably ineffective, but the door was already opening from the inside. Clara stood there, hard drive in one hand, gun in the other, her face smudged with dust from the ventilation system. "I got what I could," she said. "But he deleted at least 40%. The prisoner records, they're backed up," said a voice from behind her. Robert Haverton stepped into view, silver-haired and distinguished even in this moment of crisis. He wasn't armed, didn't look afraid. He looked almost amused. "Did you really think I'd keep my only copies here? That I'd be that careless?" Haverton smiled. "I've been doing this for 30 years. I've survived audits, investigations, hostile takeovers. You think a waitress and a desperate billionaire are going to take me down?" "We already did," Clara said. "The data dump went live 6 hours ago. The whole world knows what you've done. The world knows a story. A compelling one, I'll admit. But stories aren't evidence. Stories can be contested, spun, denied. Haverton gestured around the room. You needed this facility to prove the story, and I just deleted half of it. Michael stepped forward, and Haverton's expression shifted. Recognition, then something like satisfaction. Michael Reed, the man himself. You cost me a fortune with your sabotaged algorithm. 3 years of corrupted data, trades that should have made billions producing only modest returns. I have to admit, I underestimated you. You tortured him, Clara said, voice shaking with fury. Kept him in a cell, drugged him, broke him. I gave him purpose, a chance to contribute to something larger than himself. He chose to waste that opportunity. Haverton looked at Ethan. And you, Ethan Vale, I almost recruited you. You would have been perfect, intelligent, ruthless, motivated by the right things. Instead, you chose to throw away everything for what? Principles? Morality? Those are luxuries for people who don't understand how power really works.
Power without accountability is tyranny, Michael said quietly. That's what you never understood. You thought you were above consequences, that wealth and connections made you untouchable. But here we are. And you're finished. Am I? Haverton pulled out his phone, showing them the screen. On it was a live feed of the safe house where they'd left Dylan and Sarah. Your son is adorable, by the way. 7 years old, likes soccer, terrible at spelling. I know everything about him, Ethan. Where he sleeps, what he eats, who he talks to. Ethan's world contracted to a single point of white-hot rage. He raised his gun, finger on the trigger, every instinct screaming to shoot this man who'd threatened his child. Do it, Haverton said calmly. Pull the trigger. Become a murderer for everyone watching. Ethan realized Clara's camera was recording, live streaming everything. Thousands, maybe millions of people were watching this confrontation in real time. That's your play? Clara asked. Threaten a child on camera? Make yourself so obviously monstrous that no jury could acquit you. My play is leverage. I walk out of here, no charges filed, no further investigation, and the boy stays safe. You continue this crusade, and I make him disappear the same way I made 30 others disappear. Your choice. Haverton looked at each of them. You wanted to be heroes. Heroes make sacrifices. The room was silent except for the hum of servers and the distant sound of gunfire from elsewhere in the facility. Ethan thought about Dylan asleep on a couch, innocent and trusting. He thought about the 30 people still missing, the ones whose names were on Michael's list. He thought about every person Haverton had destroyed in his decades of operating above the law. Then he looked at the phone in Haverton's hand and started laughing. What's funny? Haverton demanded. That feed. You're showing me a live feed of the safe house. Ethan lowered his gun. Which means you don't have people there yet. You're bluffing. If you actually had Dylan, you'd have already sent proof. A picture, a video, something concrete. All you have is surveillance footage and threats. Haverton's expression flickered, just for a second, but it was enough. Felix, Ethan said into his mic. You catching this? Felix's voice came through excited and breathless. Already on it, tracing his phone's transmission, hacking his security feeds, and got it, sending false footage to his monitoring system now. He thinks he's watching the safe house, but he's actually watching a loop from 3 hours ago. Haverton looked at his phone, then at them, calculation replacing confidence. Clara stepped forward, and Ethan saw she'd been doing something with her other hand while they talked, plugging a device into the server system, downloading data that Haverton thought he'd deleted. Here's what's really going to happen, Clara said. You're going to give us the access codes to your backup systems. All of them. The ones in the cloud, the ones in offshore servers, the physical copies hidden in banks and safety deposit boxes. Everything. And if I refuse, then we let the world watch you refuse. Let them see you protect your secrets while threatening a child. Let them see exactly who you are. Clara moved closer to him, her camera catching every detail of his face. You've spent your whole life hiding, Robert. Layers of shell companies and intermediaries always in the shadows. But right now, 30 million people are watching you. And when the FBI arrives, and they're already on their way, Eric made sure of that. You'll have a choice. Cooperate and maybe you get a plea deal. Or refuse and spend whatever's left of your life in a cell like the one you kept my father in. Haverton stared at her,
and for the first time, Ethan saw something like fear cross the man's face. Not fear of death or imprisonment, but fear of exposure, of being known, of having his carefully constructed empire of shadows dragged into the light. "You can't guarantee anything," Haverton said.
"You're right. I can't. The system you corrupted might protect you. Your lawyers might find loopholes. You might walk away from this with nothing more than a fine and some bad publicity." Clara's voice was steady, implacable. "But your empire is over. Every company you control is under investigation. Every politician you've bought is distancing themselves. Every secret you've kept is being exposed. You're done, Robert. The only question is whether you go down fighting or whether you take this one chance to show you're something more than a monster." Haverton looked at all of them, Clara, Michael, Ethan, then at the camera, at the millions of invisible witnesses. His phone buzzed with incoming calls, messages, probably his lawyers and political allies abandoning him in real time. "The access codes," he said quietly, "are in a safety deposit box. First National Bank, downtown Manhattan. Box 1847. The key is in my office here, second drawer." Michael moved to get it, covering Haverton with his weapon. The older man didn't resist, didn't move. He just stood there as his world collapsed around him, looking smaller somehow, less powerful without his shadows to hide in. Eric's voice came through the earpiece. "FBI is on site. We need to extract now. Our legal authority for this operation is questionable at best." "Copy that," Clara said. She grabbed the hard drives from the server, the physical evidence they'd risked everything for. "Let's go." They left Haverton standing in the server room surrounded by the ruins of his empire and ran for the exits. Behind them, Ethan could hear federal agents entering the facility, shouting commands, taking control. They made it to the vans with Eric's team, everyone accounted for except two of Eric's men who'd stayed behind to provide cover. The convoy peeled away from the facility just as FBI vehicles blocked all the access roads, sirens wailing in the pre-dawn darkness. "Did we get it?" Ethan asked, breathless. "Everything we needed?" Clara was already plugging in the hard drives, Felix working remotely to decrypt and verify. Files started appearing on screen, prisoner transfer records, financial transactions, communications between Haverton and dozens of powerful people. "We got it," Felix said, voice shaking with relief. "Everything. Names, dates, locations, evidence of 37 people being held in facilities across the country. And the financial trail. Ethan, this connects to senators, judges, corporate executives. The conspiracy goes deeper than we thought." "Then we release it," Michael said. "All of it. No more holding back, no more strategic timing. We flood the system with so much truth they can't suppress it all." They uploaded everything while driving back to the safe house, watching the data spread across the internet like wildfire. News organizations picked it up immediately. Social media exploded. Within an hour, 3 senators had resigned. Within 2 hours, the FBI had launched simultaneous raids on 7 facilities identified in the documents. By the time they reached the safe house, 37 people were being freed from illegal imprisonment. Sarah met them at the door, Dylan asleep in her arms. "Is it over?" she asked. "Yeah," Ethan said, taking his son, feeling the weight of him, the warmth. "It's over." But of course it wasn't. Not really. The next 3 months were a blur of depositions, grand jury testimonies, media interviews. Robert Haverton was arrested and denied bail. Andrew Zhao fled to Monaco but was extradited after 2 weeks. 17 companies were dissolved. 43 people faced criminal charges. Ethan's company was seized by the SEC during the investigation, but eventually returned when it became clear he'd been acting as a whistleblower rather than a co-conspirator. By then, he'd lost most of his clients, his partners had abandoned him, and his net worth had cratered from $8 billion to barely $8 million. He didn't care. He sold the penthouse, liquidated his assets, and settled the remaining legal issues. When the dust cleared, he had enough money for a modest life and a clear conscience. Clara testified at 7 trials, her face broadcast across every news channel. She became simultaneously famous and infamous, a hero to some, a troublemaker to others. The restaurant fired her, but she was already gone, working with advocacy groups to help the freed prisoners rebuild their lives. Michael Reed was officially exonerated, his criminal record erased.
But 3 years in captivity had left marks that wouldn't fade. He moved in with Clara, spending his days slowly, carefully, remembering how to exist without walls around him. 6 months after the raid on Haverton's facility, Ethan found himself in Queens, standing outside a small diner with a for sale sign in the window. It was a dump, cracked tiles, outdated equipment, in a neighborhood that had seen better decades. It was perfect. He called Clara. "I found a place." She arrived 30 minutes later with Michael, both of them looking at the diner with the same skeptical expression. "This is your big plan?" Clara asked. "A diner?" "Hear me out. Dylan needs stability, something normal. I need work that doesn't involve destroying my soul for profit. And you," he looked at her, "you've spent 3 years fighting. Maybe it's time to build something instead." "I don't know how to run a diner." "Neither do I, but we'll figure it out." Ethan opened the door, the bell above it chiming. Inside it smelled like grease and old coffee and possibility. "We could serve food to people who need it. Hire people who need second chances. Make this place something good." Michael walked through the space, touching counters, checking the kitchen. "It needs work. A lot of work. I've got time, and apparently I'm good at taking on impossible projects." Ethan looked at Clara. "What do you think?" She was quiet for a long moment, and Ethan couldn't read her expression. Then she smiled, a real smile, the first he'd seen that wasn't tinged with grief or determination or exhaustion. "I think we should call it Reed's," she said, "after my father, the man who fought back when it would have been easier to give in." Michael's eyes filled with tears. "Clara, you taught me that some things are worth fighting for, that power without conscience is just tyranny in expensive suits, that the only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing." She took his hand. "You did something, Dad. You sacrificed everything to stop them. That deserves to be remembered." They bought the diner with the last of Ethan's liquid assets, spent 3 months renovating it, Ethan learning plumbing, Clara learning to cook, Michael designing a menu that somehow combined comfort food with mathematical precision. Dylan helped paint the walls, his small handprints preserved in blue near the door. Sarah thought they were crazy, but helped anyway, managing the books with the same precision she'd applied to raising her nephew. Felix showed up one day with a new point-of-sale system and refused payment, saying he owed them for making his $500,000 payday possible. He became a regular, coding in the corner booth, teaching Dylan basic programming between bites of Michael's famous meatloaf. Reed's opened on a Tuesday in October, to a line that stretched around the block. Half the people were there for the food. The other half wanted to meet the people who'd taken down a billionaire conspiracy. Ethan served them all, learning that there was a different kind of satisfaction in handing someone a good meal than in closing a billion-dollar deal. Clara worked the counter, still invisible to some customers, but choosing that invisibility now rather than having it forced on her. And Michael cooked, finding peace in the rhythm of preparation, the chemistry of combining ingredients, the simple magic of feeding people. The press eventually lost interest. The trials concluded. Haverton got 40 years, Zhao got 25, dozens of others received sentences ranging from probation to life. The 37 freed prisoners were interviewed, their stories told, their lives slowly rebuilding. One of them, a journalist who'd been investigating defense contractor fraud before his disappearance, came to the diner 6 months after it opened. He sat at the counter, ordered coffee, and watched Clara work. "I wanted to thank you," he said when she brought his order, "for not giving up, for finding us." Clara nodded, not sure what to say. "You would have done the same." "Maybe. But you did it. That matters." He became another regular, writing articles about recovery and resilience from that same corner booth where Felix coded. A year after the diner opened, Ethan woke up in the small apartment above it. Nothing like his old penthouse, but infinitely more home. Dylan was already up, helping Clara prep for the breakfast rush, their easy banter drifting through the floor. Ethan's phone still got messages sometimes. Threats from people who thought he'd betrayed his class. Praise from people who saw him as a hero. Job offers from companies that wanted his name and notoriety. He deleted them all without reading. His life wasn't perfect. The diner barely broke even most months. His back hurt from working the grill. He'd traded tailored suits for an apron permanently stained with coffee. But Dylan was happy. Safe. Growing up knowing his father not as an untouchable billionaire, but as a man who cooked eggs and took out trash and helped with homework and made mistakes and tried to do better. Clara had stopped jumping at shadows. She still had nightmares about Clearwater, still woke up sometimes convinced she was back in her apartment hunting conspiracies alone. But Michael was there to ground her, and the diner gave her purpose. And slowly, very slowly, she was learning to live instead of just survive. One evening, after closing, the four of them sat at the counter sharing a meal Michael had made. Nothing fancy, just good food prepared with care. Dylan was telling a rambling story about his soccer game, his voice filling the small space with life and noise. "You ever regret it?" Clara asked Ethan quietly. "Giving up everything?" Ethan looked around the diner, at the mismatched chairs they'd found at thrift stores, at the menu board with Michael's handwriting, at his son's gap-toothed grin, at Clara's tired but genuine smile. "I gave up money," he said. "I didn't give up everything. I traded everything for this. This is a diner in Queens. This is a place where people are seen, where what matters isn't how much you're worth, but whether you treated someone with dignity. Where a waitress isn't invisible and a billionaire isn't above consequence, and a 7-year-old can grow up believing that doing the right thing actually means something." Ethan smiled. "I spent my whole life chasing wealth because I thought it meant security. Turns out security is knowing who you are when everything else gets stripped away." Michael raised his coffee cup. "To second chances." Clara raised hers. "To finishing the fight." Ethan raised his, and Dylan copied him without understanding. "To family. Whatever form it takes." They drank to that, and outside the window, Queens continued its endless hustle. Millions of people living lives too small for billionaires to notice, but too important to forget. The sign above the diner flickered, neon tubing that needed replacing but worked well enough. "Reads," it said in blue cursive, "a monument not to empire or power but to the stubborn refusal to let evil win without a fight." And inside, a waitress, a billionaire, a rescued prisoner, a child, and all the others who'd found their way to this small place continued the hardest work of all, building something good in a world that made goodness difficult. Not because it was profitable, not because it was easy, but because when you've seen the worst people can be, sometimes the only thing left worth doing is showing the world the best they could become. The fight was over. The life had just begun. And that, Ethan thought as Dylan laughed at something Clara said, was worth more than every billion he'd ever made.